please keep in mind that this is all a jumbled mess in my mind. I've tried to forget it over and over, and it's just this memory in the back of my head. I don't remember too many details other than very specific moments. So trying to put this out into a story is a little hard. Either way, here goes. It was a warm summer day about 2 or 3 years ago when me and my friend, we will name him Tom for the sake of keeping his name private, he doesn't want anything to do with this, was sent to a call from an elderly woman thinking there was someone in her house. We get calls like these all the time, and it's often something as simple as the house settling or the water systems, and the woman reported that she hadn't in fact seen anybody, but we went to check it out nonetheless. There was one slight problem, however. The address we were given didn't exist. I asked the operator to repeat the address after hearing it the first time, and she told me that the woman had specifically stated that address. Again, this stuff happens all the time with people because they forget their own address, or in a panic they say it wrong on the phone. Tom and I were told to just go to the next closest address and look for a little pink house, because that's how the elderly woman had described it. Tom and I considered the possibility of it being a prank call, and along the way there, and decided that if it was, we should track down the call and talk to the kids' parents. As we got close to the given address, to our surprise, there was a little pink 2-story house. It was something straight out of the 50s, with a wide picket fence up front, a little rocking chair on the front porch, and a mini garden hanging from the awning. But it wasn't what we expected when we were told to look for a pink house. It was ancient. The paint looked like it had been washed off by hard weather over many years to where the light brown of the wood was showing through. It was chipped off in so many places, and the walls were in so much disrepair, it looked like it was going to topple over any second. Tom and I quickly got out of the car after spending probably a little too long looking at the house, and walked up to the door to knock. As my knuckles hit against the wood, it creaked open. It was already unlocked and open. I called out into the house as to not alarm the woman with a simple, "This is the police. Come out with your arms up." This was also to get any possible house invaders out in the open. Something wasn't right though. There was an indescribable feeling as soon as we stepped foot inside of the house, almost as if walking into a party without knowing anyone there, almost as if we didn't belong. The inside of the house was just what you would expect after seeing the outside. It was a scene straight out of the 50s, but it was all in so much disrepair, like all the furniture and paintings had been left to rot and fall apart in the house. The lights didn't work, so we brought out our own flashlights and walked around to investigate. Tom searched the ground floor, and I decided to go up the stairs. This is truly when something really felt wrong. With each step, the stairs felt heavier and heavier to climb, as if the whole house was leaning up against me. Each step creaked its little tune, and the walls seemed to bend and arch over my head as I got closer to the top of the stairs. I was sweating, and my vision was fading, and as soon as it had all started, it stopped when I reached the top. It felt like I had walked multiple miles to get up the staircase, and at this point, I was heaving and leaning against the top of the railing. The top floor was very simple and had only one room. The stairs led up to a landing which curved right to a little hallway with that single room. I will never forget what I saw in there. As I walked down the hallway, Still catching my breath, I slowly walked towards the room and turned into the doorway. Standing in the middle of the room was nothing, and I truly mean nothing. It was a void. That nothing turned to me, and the saying, "Stare into the abyss long enough, and the abyss will stare into you," was given a whole new meaning. It didn't look at me, it looked through me, and suddenly I didn't feel right. For a moment I didn't feel like I was supposed to exist, that this house was right and I was wrong. For a very brief moment I felt like walking into that nothing. That was until Tom grabbed me and pulled me out of the room. He shut the door as fast as possible, and I looked at him, and he gave me a look I could only recognize as, I saw it too. Nothing phases me. After all the work I've done and all the calls I've been to, there is never a surprise, and that terrified both of us. We got back in the car and reported back to the station, asking for backup in case of an emergency. But the next second we looked out the window, the house was gone. It was as if it had never existed. The others arrived at the scene and looked at us as if we each had 3 eyes. It became a running joke at the office each and every time we got a call. We were soon forgotten by everyone but Tom and I. I don't care what the hell the report says. According to it, there was never an elderly woman, and there was never a pink house. But we know what we saw, and I believe someone is trying to cover it all up. That little pink house is somewhere. I was the first responder to a suicide, and I found these letters on the body. I am a paramedic and had a call for an obvious suicide. I was the first one to show up at the house and didn't waste any time getting in there. I found the body behind a closed door, where he had obviously hung himself. I'm a little freaked out about the letters. Can someone tell me if this kind of thing can transfer from person to person? I never told anyone about the letters, but have been feeling like someone had been watching me recently. I have transcribed part 1 of the letter below, and will get to the other parts when I can find the time. Note 1. Don't open the door, you let him out. Or was he an it? You let it out. I was never clear on that part. The only thing I can remember is the overpowering sense of dread that came with him. It. I tell friends that I did this on accident. Do they know the truth? I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. Since you're reading this, it came. And it won. It all started when my girlfriend passed. I seemed to have lost all sense of purpose. Every day was the same. Every night filled with regret for not being able to save her. Not believing her, but I believe her now. I just wish I had the chance to tell her while she was still here. Soon enough. I repeat to myself for the dozenth time. Soon she will know that I believe her. She never told me about her past. Insisted that it wasn't important. Said that it would only drive me away. I never met her family. It was always just her and I. Her and I for as long as I can remember. But that all changed 4 months ago. That all changed the night she killed herself. When we first met, things were great. We could hardly spend time apart from each other. Towards the end, however, I found myself wanting to be away from her. Not because of a lack of love, but because she became increasingly exhausting to handle. I stopped counting the nights I woke up alone in bed to find her sitting in the bathtub, rocking back and forth. I could do nothing to comfort her when she got like that. Powerless, I could only curl up in the tub beside her and hold her until dawn. When I confronted her about all of this, she would only shake her head and tell me that I wouldn't understand, that it wasn't happening to me. She started losing sleep, stopped eating, starting to become more and more paranoid. I finally convinced her to tell me what had happened to get her so worked up. I wish I had just left things alone. I wish I left that night. I know it's shitty of me, but maybe I would still be here. Ever since she was a girl, she felt like she was being followed, being watched from every corner of every room she was in. She had felt things touch her, grab her, trip her. She would hear voices only at night, telling her that they were coming for her. She eventually developed a manic, depressive personality, and at a very young age started cutting herself. She said that it was the only way to get the voices to stop. Fast forward to that night. That night will haunt me until my very last breath. Things were getting better for the most part. It had been a couple weeks since her last breakdown. I woke up in the middle of the night and she wasn't in bed. I knew she would be in the bathroom all night, so I just lay there, waiting for her. After a few minutes, I started hearing banging. Then I felt it. At first it started as just a knock, then steadily it picked up pace, and I felt like there was a horse galloping right in my bed with me. I jumped up and ran to the bathroom, where I knew my girlfriend was. The door was locked. I shook the knob and started banging on the door for her to open. No response. I grabbed my phone and texted her, hoping to convince her to unlock the door. I could hear the bath running. I waited a couple of minutes for her to text me back. My phone buzzed, showing a reply. Before I had a chance to read it, from the other side of the door I heard her talking to someone. Who was she talking to? I couldn't make out the most of what she was saying, but picked out a few words and phrases such as death, kill me, leave him alone. I heard a sound, much like plaster breaking, and then my house started shaking, rumbling, like a big earthquake had just struck. I threw my shoulder into the door, over and over. All the while, I could hear her screaming, "Stop! Stop!" I kicked at the door, threw my shoulder into it. Everything I tried would not get me through. I started screaming for her. She only yelled back, "Leave him alone! Take me instead!" And the house stopped shaking. There was no sound anymore, but the sound of the bathtub overflowing. I tried the knob again. This time the door opened. I hesitated for a second before pushing myself into the bathroom. Water flooded the floor. Dark water, red water, bloody water. My girlfriend lay there in the tub, arms and legs and neck sliced over and over again. The rest of that day does not matter to the story. It was only a few days later that I realized that I had never checked the message she had sent me. Do you know what it's like reading something that was written by someone you love, days after they have passed? I was scared shitless to read it, to read the final words of my love to me. Do not open the door. You let it out. Sorry for the delay, guys. Things are starting to get weird for me. But I can't shake this feeling that I'm being followed. Is that you, Chad? Are you reading my post and trying to freak me out? Well, it's working, man. I didn't get much sleep after last shift last night. I worked the late shift last night. At one point, my partner Chad was using the restroom and I was sitting in the ambulance waiting for a call and transcribing more of the letter. I found a symbol, or rather some of the letter was written in a symbol, in red ink too. Blood. As I was transcribing it, I could hear I could hear a voice in my head that only got louder the more complete the symbol became. I could not understand the language. It sounded like some sort of ancient ritual. Oh, I had to stop. My vision was blurring and my hands started shaking. There's something unnerving about it. If anyone can find anything, please let me know. I was able to get to sleep just fine, but have started having the craziest dreams. In my dreams, I am hurting myself. Only I don't feel any sense of fear. It's like I'm hurting myself to save myself. My dream self is happy that I'm bleeding everywhere, smiling the entire time. From now, here is the rest of the letter. Note 2. This isn't right. My mum tells me that the grief is getting to me. Guilt, more like it. My girlfriend told me that something was wrong, and I wish that I had listened. Ever since that night, I can't sleep. When I sleep, I dream of her. I dream of that night. I find her body lying there. Only she is still alive and talking. Why wouldn't you believe me? You could have saved me. I beg her to forgive me. Promise her that I will be with her soon. She begs me to end my life, begs me to join her. Most nights, there is a vision and voice in my head, a voice telling me how much I have failed. The guilt eats at me. I would do anything to have her back, to tell her how wrong I was. I start hallucinating, seeing my girlfriend around my house. Only there's a shadow following her. And every time I reach out to her, the shadow grows and I grow colder. I think there's something else going on here. At times, I feel like she wants to hurt me. I started seeing a shrink, but that has only made things worse. I wonder if the medication is somehow counteracting and causing my hallucinations. I haven't taken any medication in almost 2 weeks now, and things are seeming to get better. I no longer hear or see my girlfriend, which is bittersweet. I miss her. I want to be with her. I thought things were getting better, but I was wrong. I awoke with her on top of me, holding my wrist down, just staring at me, staring into my soul. I was frozen. I was only able to lay there while she had her way with me. My friends swear it was just a dream, but I can't believe them. I feel that she is still alive somewhere, trying to get a hold of me. Today I found an excerpt online about demon rituals and summonings. I have figured out a way to bring my love back from the dead. I must find a sacrifice. But whom? I sacrificed the bunny last night for the ritual. I am going to say that it did not work, at least not from what I could tell. I was expecting some instantaneous sign to show me that it worked. I need this to work. I need my love. I become frantic, even manic depressant. After the ritual, I feel as I do not belong in this body. I've ended up tearing most of the skin on my inner thigh off. There's something about my skin that I am no longer familiar with. Do I belong in this body? The longer I go on without my love, the more I feel like ending it all. I need to be with her again. Someone vandalized my house while I was at work today. Everything was turned upside down, inside out, as if someone was looking for something. After I reported it to the police and cleaned everything up, I couldn't find anything that had been stolen or was out of place. As I headed into my bedroom, I got this overwhelming sense that someone was in there, or something. I grabbed a bat from my garage and headed into the room. Everything was exactly as I had left it. Only there was a lump in my bed under the covers. A body lump. As if someone were laying in it, sleeping. None the wiser to me standing there. I froze. I was standing there a good minute until the lump started to move. I couldn't stand still anymore. I flew erratically at the source of the movement and whirled as hard as I could with my bat, over and over and over again. All I could see was red. I had lost it. I was no longer myself. After what felt like an hour of striking at my bed, I had to stop. I couldn't breathe the entire time. I was hitting the lump. I heard a voice. Harder. It encouraged me. Keep hitting. Harder, harder, harder. The lump had not moved since the first time. I waited a good minute before I was able to pull the covers up from the bed. There in the bed was my girlfriend. She was just lying there with her hands up, protecting herself. She wasn't breathing. Had the sacrifice worked? Had the demon accepted my sacrifice? Nothing I could do made her react to me. Her body may be lying in this bed, but it is not her. There were no signs of here left. I couldn't bring myself to remove her from the bed, so I crawled in and lay next to her. This was the last time I slept next to my girlfriend. I woke up to her staring at me. She would not talk. She would not move. She would only stare at me. After a few minutes, she started talking. This is your fault, she told me. I would be alive if I had never met you. You are a terrible person. This is your fault. Don't you want to be with me? Join me. Join me in death. You will be free. I could not take the guilt anymore. Was she even here in bed with me? Is this all just in my mind? I am going to hang myself. I need to free myself from this world so that I can be with her. I will leave the door open so that these feelings do not pass to the person that finds me. I do not want even more blood on my hands. I have set up a camera in the corner that I will use as my last will and testament. Please, whoever finds me, get the tape to my parents. They will not understand. End of letter. I went back to the property to find the video camera. It was all destroyed, but I was able to remove the memory card and get it to play. Guys, this is effed. You know how he mentioned he was going to leave the door open? When I found him, the door was closed. I'm shaking watching this. It shows the guy, and he does give his last will before he hangs himself. The camera is to his back, and he is facing the door. As soon as he kicked out the stool from underneath him, his girlfriend sat right up in bed and stared at him. Her smile grew wider the longer he struggled. Once he had done moving, she got out of bed, walked to the door and shut it. She proceeded to the camera, picked it up, pointed at the camera, smiled and smashed it against the wall. What do I do? This is obviously not some guy's schizophrenic thoughts. This actually happened. And what's worse is it seems that the curse passes to the person that opens the door with the person behind it. Does that make me next? Should I seek any professional help? I was the first responder to the 9/11 attacks. What I saw wasn't what I expected. When I got the call, I couldn't believe it. I thought this was some joke from dispatch. I was dearly mistaken, and I wish I called in sick that day. I wasn't prepared for this. None of us were. My friend Josh and I were the first to get there, along with some paramedics and firefighters. Josh stayed with the paramedics outside, while I went in with the firemen. We thought about bringing a rescue dog, Cody, but we decided collectively against it. I'm glad we didn't. He was a good dog in his life. When we entered the first tower, the second plane hit. It was so loud, we almost went deaf. That isn't an exaggeration either. When I say loud, I mean it. My ears rang like hell. Windows shattered, sending glass shards towards us. A couple of us had cuts, while others were unscathed. I opened the door and the room was empty. I turned around to tell everyone else the room was clear, but they were gone. I thought they went on to the next floor, and I was kind of right. I wish I never found them. I should have radioed to check on them. I just had to be an idiot. I went to each of the cubicles hoping to find them. When I searched the last 10, I found a corpse in each of them. They were neatly tucked in under the desk of that cubicle. Their throats were slit with what I assumed to be a sharp knife. I was wrong about that. Just then I heard a stabbing sound, followed by something falling to the floor. I rushed up the stairs, hoping to catch a murderer. I found them. It just wasn't what I expected to see. I expected a man holding a knife or some other type of blade. Just in time, I watched it slide a corpse under a cubicle. Like that was its calling card. I knew immediately that it was what killed my men. I hid, but not well enough. It charged at me, screeching that it was scared. It was the voice of a little girl. It had my dead daughter's voice. I shot it and it ran off. I knew now was the chance to run. Of course, it wasn't that simple. It was impossible for it to be that easy. Why would it have? I was in a flaming building, being chased by a demon that sounded like my daughter. When I got to the 13th floor, a part of the roof caved in, and there was a tiny space I would have to crawl through. It couldn't be that simple either. The demon manifested in front of me and bared its left arm, or where its left arm should be. Instead, there was a long claw. It grabbed me by the neck, but not tight enough to kill me. I kind of wish it had. It stabbed me in the leg, then dropped me. I opened fire on it, with I'd say 9 hits. I tried to shoot myself, but I was out of ammo. I ran up the stairs. How fast? I don't know. But faster than a human, it was faster than me. And that's all I need to know. Clenching my bleeding wound, I stumbled over to the staircase going down. My legs ached so much. I almost considered throwing myself out of the window from the pain. I got through the crawl space in the stairs and rushed out of the building. I was then assisted by the medics that were with Josh. Nobody could find him. It was like he just vanished. I would have seen him come in the building. I would have seen him come out. I looked up at the top of the building, just in time to see it fall with the rest of the building. It felt a strange wave of relief wash over me. My squad was presumed dead, and Josh missing in action. Nobody believes what I saw. They think I'm crazy, that I was seeing things from adrenaline rushes. I was in a psych ward for 10 years, and counseling for 5. I'm in my late 30s now, and I live alone. I suffer from PTSD and depression. The thing screeches still haunt me. It sounded just like when my daughter got run over. I've been giving myself cuts and bruises every day for the lives I could have saved. I started with 1 a day when my daughter died, and I've been getting up to 3 daily now. My wife left me because of it. I hear my daughter whispering outside my door. Mostly nonsense, but I heard, "Papa, let me in, please. I'm scared." I looked in the peephole and saw pitch black. Its eyes were pitch black. I know I effed up. There isn't much I can do now. I have a shotgun though. 1 shell. 1 chance to end it. This is a cry for help. I don't know what to do or why this thing chose me to torture. I'm considering just shooting myself just to escape it. It is scratching the door with that claw. I think if I shoot the claw off, then go and start bashing it with the butt of the stock, that may work. I am conflicted. I don't know how I know, but the only thing keeping it going is me. If it fails its goal, it may stop. And what's my neck? I'll take my own off if I must. You can't kill something that doesn't exist, right? I'm ready to die. It better be too.
Well,
I grew up in Ohio in the 70s, and me and my childhood friend Joe were outside all the time we could manage it. Joe lived on a farm that bordered a pretty big forest, and my parents would drop me off in the morning, and we'd stay in the woods all weekend. We'd only come out for school. We loved pretending we were frontiersmen. We'd build shelters, traps, practice making fire with sticks, the whole 9 yards. When we got to be in high school, we got this notion to pull a Stand By Me. This was based on the movie of the same name that just had come out. The idea was that we'd walk the railroad tracks out in the country, but instead of looking for a dead body, we'd find cool bridges to fish from and camp a little ways off the tracks. Of course, we knew this was dangerous and would likely be trespassing, but we were kids. We had a lot of fun. We did find beautiful rivers. We discovered bridges no one went to. We fished. We hid from trains. At night, we camped in woods, just near the tracks, and made small hidden fires. Nothing bad ever happened. It was idyllic. In fact, it was so fun we did it multiple times. Never had a problem. After high school, me and Joe went our own ways. We both left home, but always stayed in touch and always tried to coordinate visits so we'd see each other occasionally. Well, one summer in the mid 90s, it worked out that we were both in town for about a week. We'd do stuff with family in the day, and at night we'd either catch drinks at a bar or sit outside Joe's house around a fire and talk about the old days. One night, me and Joe got to talking about our Stand By Me trips. Well, nostalgia and beer are a hell of a mix. Soon we decided to take a day, walk the rails, camp one night, and walk home. The day came. We started out early morning. We had my wife drop us off in our old spot where we used to start, right outside our hometown. She thought this was absolutely crazy and made sure to mention it. When she pulled away, Joe suggested that instead of walking the usual route, we take the opposite direction, just to be adventurous. We knew the land well, we had a map, so I gave her, "What the hell?" and off we set. The day went fine, it was fun and a little sad, but in a good way. We found a bridge and sat on the edge, smoked a joint and moved on. We had no fishing gear, but we brought some canned food and other stuff. Before night started to set in, we picked a spot to camp. It was a thick forested area, trees on every side of the train tracks, so you felt like you were in a tunnel. We had brought small hammocks to sleep on. But before we set them up, we decided to do a little scouting of the perimeter. Now, this is what we used to do in the old days too. We'd walk the area around a little bit to make sure some dude's house wasn't just over a hill, and we were actually camping in their yard. We walked maybe 100 or so feet into the woods and up a small incline. We figured if we didn't see anything from on top of this short hill, we'd be fine. But when we got to the top, we saw an old building down at the bottom, about 100 yards into the woods. It was barely visible. We pondered over what to do. We both assumed it was a sugar shack or something because there didn't appear to be a clear road into it. From where we were, there didn't look to be anyone in it there. All was quiet. No movement could be seen. No lights. We decided to walk a little closer just to make sure. We came down the hill very slowly, And as we neared the building, we saw it wasn't a sugar shack at all. It was an old church. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. It was a squat, sagging building whose wooden planks were almost black from years of moss and rot. A cross still stood on top of the place, also weathered black. None of the windows had glass, and there were no doors, just open doorways. We got close enough to see inside. There were rows of pews and a built-up section in front for a preacher to stand. We didn't go all the way in. We didn't want to. Beyond all that, there was no sign of anyone else. No footprints, no paths, no roads. It was an abandoned church. We left immediately and went back up the hill to a spot we had picked to camp. Having a hill between us and the church made us feel better, but we were still a little uneasy. We chalked it up to the natural creepiness seeing a church in the middle of the woods would elicit. Besides, at this point it was dusk, and we just decided to rig up our hammocks and go to sleep and move on at early morning. Night set in, and as we lay in our hammocks and shot the shiz, we began to hear something in the direction of the church. Our conversation about it went a little like this. Do you hear that? What the F is that? It sounds like people singing. And it did sound just like singing. We both slid right out of our hammocks and hunkered down, straining to hear more. We listened for a minute or two, and the singing continued, but it wasn't getting louder. Finally, we decided to creep back up the hill and see if we could spy where the sound was coming from. We could still move very quietly in the woods from the old days. It was second nature to us. The moon was barely out, but it provided enough light so you wouldn't walk right into a tree. But it was near pitch black. We didn't use flashlights as we crept slowly up the hill, and we didn't talk. When we got to the top, we saw light in the distance. It was coming from the church, and the singing was coming from inside. Joe and I put our heads close together and had a hushed conversation that boiled down to, can you believe this, Shiz? The light looked to be candlelight from the way it flickered, and though we tried, we couldn't make out what was being sung. It sounded like church music, but in another language. We sat and watched for a while, trying to see who was in there, and we only saw occasional shadows. We had no intention of getting closer either. We had about a football field length between us, and we aimed to keep it that way. The singing continued for a bit, and then it stopped. After that, a booming male voice began to chant. I was already freaked out, but this voice thoroughly scared the shiz out of me. It sounded like some Old Testament preacher you see in movies, but again, it was like he was speaking in a different language, because we couldn't understand a single word. Eventually, it got to where the single male voice would say something and then a bunch of voices would answer in song. This lasted for a while, and then they all broke into this long, sustained wail that just kept getting louder. It got so loud and so disturbing that I covered my ears. Then it stopped. At this point, I was just getting ready to say, let's get the F out of here, when Joe put a hand on my shoulder and hissed, they're coming out! We were far enough away that we couldn't make them out really well, but what we could see was a line of figures walk out the open doorway, all holding hands in single file. We could see some of them had flashlights. They began to sing again, and the light from the flashlights began to move towards us and the hill. We booked it back down to our campsite, grabbed our shiz and ran to the tracks. Once there, we ran down the tracks in the direction we had come from. After a few minutes, we stopped and looked back. We saw lights coming down the hill. They were moving erratically, like whoever was holding them was shaking them. We continued to run in spurts and walk as fast as we could. We eventually stopped seeing the lights and came to a road. By our map, we knew a small town was about 15 minutes down it, and we walked there, got to a 24-hour gas station, and called my wife to come get us. My wife and other friends all just thought it was kids messing around. But I heard those voices, and they sure as hell didn't sound like kids to me. Not sure who those people were, but it was definitely the creepiest thing that happened to me out in the woods. Crazy church lady tried to kidnap me and my friends. This is my first post on here, but I'm hoping for the best. Okay, so this happened last night. My friends and I were all hanging out, and it had already been a hectic afternoon. Without going too much into detail, we'll save those for later. It was a relatively warm evening, so we were going for a walk around the town the majority of us lived in, which is something we do often enough that we would have felt safe doing it individually, let alone the group of 7 people we were in now. There were 2 15-year-olds and 4 16-year-olds, one of which is a month away from 17. So we had been walking for over an hour now. We always walk to this ice cream shop, which is the furthest point from the house we meet at before we turn around and head back. We were already halfway home from there at this 4-way intersection by a Dunkin' Donuts. We're approaching the intersection, laughing about something stupid, when this lady comes across the street and she starts screaming. She was borderline old, late 40s to mid 50s. For clarification, CL, crazy lady, C, cousin, OL, old lady, F, friend. So the crazy lady says, wait, stop, wait. She runs across the intersection through traffic to get to us. Now at this point, all instincts were trying to turn around. The problem was the get home we had to go in the direction this person was running from. We approach the intersection just as she reaches us. The crazy lady says, oh good, you're all teenagers. Will you come to our concert later? We have 4 brands. It's teenager music. We've got free pizza and snacks like brownies and cookies. We've even got our popcorn machine. Needless to say, we were a little disconcerted. We tried to politely decline, saying that it was getting dark and we were on our way home. However, she would not let us get a word in edgewise. My friend tried to tell this lady that she didn't like that type of music, but she quickly changed her original statement. The crazy lady said, it's all kinds of music, come on, you'll love it. If you don't like it, you can walk right back out. It's just a mile up that street, right over there. Come on, you'll fit right in. She then tries to force us in the direction of the concert, trying to get us to follow her, as if there hadn't already been multiple red flags. This was the first of the more significant ones. All of us were extremely uncomfortable now, but trying to laugh it off. My cousin was smart. She held her phone up to her ear as if she was calling someone. Although she wasn't, there's terrible call service in my town, which is something that made everyone even more nervous. My cousin said, hello, yeah, we're on our way back. We'll be there in a few minutes. And aside to crazy lady, sorry, my dad is calling. Now, crazy lady took practically no notice of this. She just kept trying to convince us. By now, the sun was almost completely set. We were all itching to just get out of there and go home. My friend says, we have to go ask our parents first. He is the most scary and unsettling part of the whole conversation, in my opinion. Crazy lady says, no, don't tell your parents. It's only half a mile up that road. You all have cell phones, don't you? You can call them on the way there. Now we are all more than a little nervous. Everyone is looking at Dunkin' Donuts as though if we looked hard enough we'd teleport. Nobody really says anything at this point. We don't know what to say. The crazy lady says, "Don't worry, it's in a church. Nothing bad can happen to you." Cue nervous laughter and muffled disagreements. "It's on until 9. We'll be there in half an hour." She gestures across the street to this other lady and two kids in matching yellow t-shirts. They come running across immediately, and as we get closer and look, it's obvious the kids are extremely uncomfortable and would rather be anywhere else in the world. The other lady is definitely older as she has white hair. The crazy lady says, "These guys are coming to a concert. They don't know anybody but..." The old lady interjects as the kids hand out a few flyers. "Old lady, they don't know anybody. Perfect." At this point, we're all done with this conversation. We have no intentions of being kidnapped 10 minutes from our destination. We start walking across the crosswalk to Dunkin' Donuts. They want assurance that we'll go later, and we give it to them. Falsely, of course. We went into Dunk's because there were more people in there, and we felt safer since there hadn't been anyone on the street. Going to be telling this story for months, honestly. All I can say is, to the crazy lady and her friends who tried to kidnap a bunch of teenagers off an empty street, let's not meet again. Odd neighbors. We've been in this house almost 2 months now. I love it. 5 acres and a lovely home. Great place to raise my kids. Then I met the neighbor across the road. Turns out his daughter lives to our left, nephew to our right, sister 2 houses one way, brother 3 houses the other way. Not uncommon, but still interesting to learn. The guy is 82, but looks and acts like he's 60. He's also the most racist, sexist person I've ever met. He told us our yard is to be mowed every 5 days. This is farmland. There is no HOA. And my yard is hayfield. We are bowling. That I am not to address him directly, but to have my husband call or go through his wife if we need anything. He said I should grow my hair out as to look more motherly. I just smiled and nodded, attributing his attitude to age. Days later, a knock on the door. Gentleman introduces himself as neighbor, diagonally across the street. Has me a Bible, says everyone on the street attends a certain church. His smile, his old teeth. Everything about his screams sleazeball. Turns, still grinning, to walk down my porch, steps saying, "See you there Sunday," before I can answer. Saturday my husband is outside when a car pulls up. First neighbor's wife walks right into my house like she owns the place, gasps at the Halloween decorations and asks to speak to the woman of the house privately outside. Yeah, outside sounds like a great idea, I snapped, more than a little agitated. Again, I consider age. Among the topics were, you need to mow the lawn. My husband is going to tell yours that you've been driving and walking out of the yard to get the mail. You need to take down those skeletons, they're vulgar. I will be babysitting your infant son twice a week for 5 hours, since he is the first, shit you not, her exact words, fresh blood in the area in a long time. At this point, my mama bear becomes way stronger than my southern manners, so I stand up and tell her to leave. She seems unfazed, telling me I need to be more ladylike, so I tell her, "Leave," or I call the cops. She huffs and leaves. She or her husband have parked in the road and stared down my house twice now. The church fellow has left us handwritten letters in our mail every week since the first Sunday. "We missed you at the church this Sunday. You need to be there this week." I already went to the cops for whatever good it did me. I feel like I moved into the Wrong Turn movies. Weird neighbors. Let's quit meeting. Crazy religious creep. This is my first account here, so a little backstory on this place. I live near the Navajo reservation in a town called Gallup, New Mexico. A town full of religious hypocrites, drunks, aggressive panhandlers, etc. This is just one of many true, horrifying tales of this town. I'm Native American, female, 21, and an alternative model. New Mexico is a poor state, meaning there's hardly any jobs here, especially near and on the reservation. So at 18, I started doing online adult webcam. In other words, I'm a cam girl, and honestly, I loved it. The pay was better than what I had thought. It gave me confidence and, most importantly, friends. One night I was getting ready for a session when I heard a knock at the door. So I quickly put on a robe and went to go check it out. Here's the thing about New Mexico. It's full of religious freaks, and living near the reservation, you get somewhat uneducated people. Anyway, I opened the door just a little bit to see who it is, when this rude asshole tries to push the door open. Thankfully, I had it chained, so he didn't come in. He then says, "Hello miss, I'm D, the church of blah blah." At first it was kind of weird because why would anyone from a church be out this late? But what he said made my skin crawl, because you see, he called me by my business name. I politely asked what he wanted, and he says, "I'm here to help you, accept our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." I tell him very nicely I wasn't interested, since I was Native American and raised traditionally Navajo. He then insults me. "You are unbeliever, and those who don't believe or accept Christ shall burn in the lake of fire." At this point, I'm freaking out, trying to close the door on him, but he was pressed up against it. I shout at him that I was going to call the police, which he shouts out. "Only Christ can save you from false gods and eternal fire, in which is the second death." I called the police, but before they came, the creep was gone. But he had left a note on my door which read, "Fornicators, sorcerers, cowards, and unbelievers shall burn in fire and sulfur." To this day, I don't know how the creep knew my camgirl name or where I lived. The police didn't do anything about it, since there was no hard evidence. Also, it was his word against mine. All I know is that the only way he could have known my webcam model name was if the guy was watching my shows. So scary religious freak, let's not meet again. Ritual. Some of you may have heard of a satanic ritual called the elevator ritual that went around the internet a few years ago. For those of you who don't know, it's basically a game where you enter an elevator by yourself in a building with at least 10 floors and press the buttons in a certain order. When you reach the final floor, you'll be in an alternative dimension, which is the same as Earth, except there's a large red cross in the sky and you're the only person alive. Obviously, I assume this was just another Reddit urban legend. But since me and my friend John are really into this kind of stuff, we decided to give it a go. There's a hotel just down the road that has over 10 floors. So we psyched each other up and went down there at 1 a.m. back on a cold night in March. Luckily, there was no one around, which made it easier to play the game. But it also made it creepier, so we could scare each other easier, which is something we've always done. And we're still great at it, despite the fact that we always expect it. Once we reached the hotel, we crept through reception and made our way to the elevator, which wasn't hard to find since it was almost in sight from the entrance to the building. Since the elevator ritual states that you have to be alone in the elevator when you perform it, we tossed a coin to decide who would go first. Heads, I went in first. Tails, he went first. Unfortunately, it was heads, so I had to be the first one to test this satanic ritual alone, in an elevator in a gross hotel. I got in, waited for the doors to close, and began the ritual. I got my phone out and looked at the notes I'd made as to how to perform the ritual, as it's pretty complicated. But these are the rules. Enter your chosen building and get into the elevator on the first floor alone. Do not proceed if anyone else is in the elevator with you. Press the button for the fourth floor. When the elevator reaches the fourth floor, do not get out. Instead, remain in the elevator and press the button for the second floor. When you reach the second floor, remain in the elevator and press the button for the sixth floor. When you reach the sixth floor, remain in the elevator and press the button for the second floor. When you reach the second floor, remain in the elevator and press the button for the 10th floor. When you reach the 10th floor, remain in the elevator and press the button for the 5th floor. When you reach the 5th floor, a young woman may enter the elevator. Do not look at her. Do not speak to her. She is not what she seems. Press the button for the first floor. If the elevator begins ascending to the 10th floor instead of descending to the first, you may proceed. If the elevator descends to the first floor, exit as soon as the doors open. Do not look back. Do not speak. If you reach the 10th floor, you may either choose to get off the elevator or to stay on it. If you choose to get off, and if the woman entered the elevator on the 5th floor, she will ask you, "Where are you going?" Do not answer her. Do not look at her. You are now in an alternative dimension where you are the only person on earth. I began the ritual. I pressed the buttons in the correct order and began to ascend and descend the floors of the hotel, all the time knowing that nothing would actually happen. I was planning my made-up story that I was going to tell John to scare him after I got out of the elevator, about how the ritual worked and that I was in an alternative dimension. I was laughing to myself at the thought of seeing his terrified face. But then something happened that turned my smile into a face of pale horror, made my blood run cold, and made me start shaking with fear. I reached the 5th floor, and a woman in a white dress entered the elevator. I stood frozen for about 5 minutes before my brain kicked into action, and I remembered that the only way to escape this was to finish the ritual. So I pressed the rest of the buttons. I hit the final button, praying that I would descend to the 1st floor and go back to the normal world rather than ascending to the 10th floor and entering the alternative dimension. But to my horror, as my trembling finger pressed the final button, the elevator began ascending. I almost broke down, but I managed to keep it together because I knew that if I stayed calm, it would be easier for me to escape. I decided that as soon as I reached the 10th floor, I would step out of the elevator, then get straight back in and repeat the ritual, as this is how you return to the real world. The doors opened. I stepped out and was momentarily fixated on the glowing red cross in the sky. Then I turned around to step back into the elevator, but was stopped stone cold in my tracks. The elevator wasn't there. In a blind panic, I began to hyperventilate and collapse to the floor. When I finally got up, I noticed an elevator to my left at the end of the corridor, about 100 meters away. I wasn't prepared to waste any time or explore this dimension, so I just sprinted to the elevator. I repeatedly slammed the button to open the doors, but it felt like it was taking a lifetime. Then I heard something that made me slam the button even faster. Footsteps coming towards me from behind. Luckily, the elevator opened when it sounded like they were right behind my back. So I stepped in and frantically pressed the buttons to undo the ritual. When I reached the 1st floor, the doors opened and I laughed through relief and happiness when I saw John standing there, telling me to be quiet so the receptionist didn't hear us. "What happened? What was it like?" John asked me. I told him that it didn't work and it was just a waste of time, then asked him if he wanted to go grab a burger. To this day, 6 months later, I'm still paranoid that I never left the alternative dimension. And every time something seems just slightly off, it petrifies me. No, hopefully, it's just a phase that will pass soon. But there's one thing I could say about my experience with the elevator ritual. It would be this: it isn't just another internet urban legend. This is something else. The elevator ritual really works. I have no explanation for it. Perhaps there's a logical one. But for now, all I can say is do not perform the elevator ritual. I performed the elevator ritual, but I did something wrong. I was really hoping that someone here can help me with this. I know that this sub has some experiences with ritual stories, what with the very popular Midnight Man and Hooded Man ritual stories. I know there is also a very popular elevator ritual story on this sub. I'm not going to post the links, just search for them if you have time. I learned about the elevator ritual from the YouTuber Top 5's theories about Alyssa Lamb video. After hearing about it, I did a little bit of research. I came across a page dictating how to do the ritual. This intrigued me. I did not believe in the supernatural at all. I was very convinced that everything could be explained by science. But last night, I took a trip into the unexplainable. On Sunday, I finally made up my mind to try this ritual. I knew I couldn't try out that day because it would require about an hour of walking to get to the nearest 10-story building. So I decided to set out the next day. However, complications arose, and I didn't get around to leaving until around 10 p.m. that night. This didn't seem like a problem to me. After all, I didn't believe in the supernatural. The following dictates what happened to me, with rough time estimates. 11:05 p.m. I arrived at the destination, a 15-story hotel, with 4 working elevators. The hotel was a very good reputation. It is known to be a place where celebrities visiting the area constantly stay. The rooms can cost up to $800 a night, and the cooking is famous for being fantastic. I walked into the hotel lobby, admiring the chandelier and bright colored walls. 11:10. After looking around the lobby for a bit, I found the nearest elevator. I remember it being busy, and I had to wait for it to be reached the first floor. When the doors opened, I entered the elevator and took out the scrap of paper on which I had written the instructions. I pushed the 4th floor button. 11:11. The doors opened on the 4th floor. No one was waiting for the elevator. I pushed the 2nd floor button. 11:12 to 11:15. I continued to go to the required floors, from the 2nd floor to the 6th floor, from the 6th floor to the 2nd floor, from the 2nd floor to the 10th floor. No one was waiting for the elevator on any of the floors. Nothing unusual had happened, but for some reason, I was very nervous. My heart was pounding in my chest. 11:16. I reached the 10th floor. I knew that in a couple of seconds, I would know if the ritual was real or not. I pushed the button for the 5th floor. 11:17. I reached the 5th floor. The doors opened. I stared at the floor, desperately hoping no one would be waiting for the elevator. But my hopes were quickly crushed. I heard soft footsteps and heard breathing. I stared at the elevator buttons, knowing that looking at her would be dangerous. Shiz. The ritual had said that a young woman might enter the elevator at this point. I pushed the 1st floor button. The elevator began to go up. This meant I was going to cross over. 11:19. The door slid open to the 10th floor. I knew that I could turn back now. I could push the first floor button, avoid looking at the woman, and leave. But I couldn't do that. I needed to see. I stepped out of the elevator. A voice echoed from behind me, like I knew it would. "Where are you going, Alex?" The voice was high-pitched, like a little girl. I knew I wasn't supposed to look back. I wasn't supposed to look at her. But I did. I turned around. I will never forget what I saw. She was wearing a black nightgown, ripped and covered in dirt. Her hair was tangled and messy. There was mascara running down her face, like she had been crying. She was not wearing any shoes. Her fingernails and toenails were long and ungroomed. But her face is the reason I couldn't sleep last night. She had dark purple eyes, so purple that it looked like amethysts. Her nose looked broken, like she had been punched in the face. Blood streamed out of it. When I looked at her, she smiled. Her lips were cracked and dry. Her teeth were black and rotted, and I could see flecks of red on them. I stared at her for maybe 30 seconds. Then she laughed a horrible, high-pitched laugh. The elevator door slammed shut faster than it should here. 11:21. I was crying. My hands were shaking, and I felt very, very tired. I hadn't even looked around me yet. Where was I? I remembered the description of the other world. Where I was matched the description. All of the lights were off. Looking out the windows, I could see the red cross that was described. But it wasn't blood red. No, it wasn't naturally red colored. It was a burning wooden cross. There was one outside every window, and if I looked close enough, I could see people. There were people on the crosses, thrashing and screaming, dying. I turned around. I wanted to leave. I ran back towards the elevator. I pushed the door button frantically. The doors opened. I wished they hadn't. It was full of corpses. There was enough room for me to walk to the panel and get out of here. But the stench was awful. These must have been people from the crosses outside. The bodies were charred and burned. All of them had nail marks from crucifixion on their hands. I followed the instructions on my piece of paper. I pushed the buttons in the same order as I had before, except this time when the doors opened. On each floor, the floors weren't empty. The girl was there. On the 4th floor, she was standing down the hallway. I could barely see her. On the 2nd floor, she was a bit closer. On the 6th floor, I could see her clearly. Back on the 2nd floor, she was actively walking towards me. Oh God, the stench was awful. On the 10th floor, she was running towards me. On the 5th, she was just feet away. I pushed the button for the 1st floor, and just like the ritual said, it again began to ascend to the 10th floor. I pushed the 2nd floor button to cancel the ascension, and the elevator began to descend. The doors opened on the 1st floor. The lobby was completely empty. I was alone with the corpses in the elevator. I knew the ritual said not to exit if anything seemed off, but I needed to get out. That effing woman was going to come back. I ran home. I threw open my door and ran upstairs. It was midnight at this point. I turned on all the lights, locked all of the doors, and huddled in the middle of my living room floor with all of the curtains drawn. I stayed there all night. Now here's my problem, no sleep. The ritual says that if you look at the woman or talk to her, she may decide to keep you for herself. Well, I looked at her, and I've seen what happens when she takes people. They end up corpses in an elevator. A tool to scare away potential travelers to the other world. It is lights out, but my hands are still shaking. I am sweating like crazy. Someone has been banging on my window for the last 3 hours. I can hear her laughing. Why don't my neighbors hear her? Why don't they see her? Why doesn't someone do something? Please help, no sleep. I am ready to take the easy way out. I've had a pistol in my lap since I got home. You guys know the supernatural. Please help make the banging stop. Please help. Her effing laughter. Make it stop. Beware the 7th floor of the elevator ritual. So this is pretty different because I've never read or heard anything about this happening in anyone's elevator ritual experience. The 7th floor. For any of you who aren't aware of the elevator ritual, you basically have to go into an elevator that has a minimum of 10 floors and visit floors 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5. Then on the 5th floor, some scary ghost lady is supposed to walk into the elevator and you're to click the 1st floor and the elevator will go to the floor 10. While in the elevator, you're not to look at or acknowledge the lady or she might take your soul for her own. Well, last night I did the elevator ritual for the first time, but instead of landing on the 5th floor, I ended up on the 7th. When it comes to the paranormal and the spirit world, I'm a believer because I grew up in a strong Christian household. But I was like, you know what? I'll just see if this works. Lol. I'm so stupid. I live in an apartment, so I was always tempted by the elevator ritual. I'm pretty scared right now because there's something scratching at my window. Mind you, that I live on the 11th floor. At around 2:50 a.m., I walked into my apartment building's rectangular elevator, which was rather dirty due to people spitting on the walls and littering in the corners. My building managers aren't the cleanly type, because they usually look and smell like they haven't showered for days at a time, and their building reflects their lifestyle. The elevator landed on the 1st floor and I inspected the floor like the instructions told me to take note on details of the 1st floor. My building is currently upgrading our bright orange red funky wall tiles that would have been desirable in the 70s but outdated in 2017 to fake stone tiles that gave the impression of classy, but one glance inside the elevator would kill that impression. The wall was halfway down with half the wall white with drywall and the other fully tiled. The floor was completely done with charcoal colored stone tiles. The lobby looked a mess, but that's what I call home. Me being the lazy person that I am, I didn't want to get out of the elevator and wait for another get out and get back in for no reason and waste my time. Decided that I'll stay in the elevator. I had a little rush of adrenaline and a bit of skepticism, but I sent up a short prayer for protection should anything go wrong. After my prayer, I clicked the 4th floor and the elevator obeyed. I did the sequence as detailed exactly in the ritual instructions because I know second hand how easily it is to have supernatural entities attached to you. I didn't want anything following me home, and I made sure I would do everything possible to avoid just that. I wasn't expecting anything to go as planned, but as I got to the 10th floor, I began to think, holy shiz, this ritual might actually work. There was a little voice in the back of my mind that was screaming for me to just click the 11th floor and go home. But I already made it so far, so I wasn't turning back, not now. I clicked the 5th floor and the elevator began going down and a burst of adrenaline coursed through my veins and I eagerly watched the number count down 9, 8 and the elevator suddenly stopped at 7. I was thinking what the F, but then I told myself that it was probably another tenant trying to use the elevator. The metal doors of the elevator took a little longer than usual to open, and when they did, I instantly regretted getting in that damn elevator. I talked to everyone in the elevator, so I was preparing to talk to the person that walked in. But when I saw the wall opposite of the elevator, I knew something was amiss. And I quickly averted my eyes because you're not supposed to look at anyone you encounter in the elevator ritual. The wall color opposite of the elevator in my building is white with a green lining on the wall. The tiles were a beige color, but on this floor everything was off. The walls were a dingy white, and the usual white light of the hallway was dimmed, like someone had painted the bulb with a brownish black. The green of the floor lining of the wall was very dark, almost black, and the floor was a brown. I stared straight at the ground to avoid looking at whoever it was coming into the elevator. From the corner of my eye, I saw a girl that was probably around 12 walk into the elevator and stood in the middle of the elevator staring at me. Her torn dress was more of a nightgown and looked like it was once white, but now was stained almost black at the bottom and different hues of brown, like dried blood and mud and dirt. Before she even walked into the elevator, I smelt her, but as she stood beside me, the stench of body odor, urine and feces clogged my nostrils, and the stench of decay that emitted from her made me want to puke. I had half a mind to run out of the elevator and get as far away from the scary bee as fast as my legs could carry me. That little voice in my head gave me pause, and despite every feeling in my body telling me to run, I stayed where I was in an attempt to stop this crazy idea. I clicked the 5th floor in the hopes that I'd get off and make a sprint to the staircase. To my horror, the elevator's doors closed, locking me in there with her, and it wasn't moving. I bit my tongue to keep me from screaming for help, and my heart was pounding so loud in my chest that I swear the girl could hear it. She wouldn't stop staring at me, but I had no intention of telling the bee to take a picture because it'll last longer. I usually get people staring at me because of my exotic eye and skin color mix. I generally don't have a problem with it unless they stare too long, but this was beyond crazy and scary. The elevator locked me in there for probably less than a minute, but oh god, it was an eternity. I never felt a second go by so slow. The door opened again on the 7th floor, and it was all worse. The walls were almost black, and the light was barely visible. I had always planned on staying in the elevator should I encounter this scary girl, but now I know why everyone left the elevator on the 10th floor. She was bloody scary. I was about to bolt down the hallway with the intention that I'd find a way to get back home. Anywhere was better than being in the elevator. Right when I was about to take off, the girl in the elevator was like, "Where are you going?" I stopped dead in tracks and was about to turn to face her until I remembered that I wasn't supposed to look at her or acknowledge her. The voice didn't reach my ears but was said into my mind, and I almost shrieked. I took the long hall which was to my left after exiting the elevator. The hallway seemed longer, but all I wanted was to reach the damn stairwell door so I could climb some flights of stairs and go home. I walked fast, and the further I got from the elevator, the more fuzzy my mind became. It seemed as if the stairwell door wasn't getting any closer. It became darker the further I got, and my mind just kept saying, "Run and don't stop." My body was getting heavy, and I needed to support myself on a wall. Everywhere began to get dark around me, and I began to forget that I was in a hallway. I could only see the lights in front of the elevator and the exit sign in front of the stairwell door that was never getting closer. Upon hearing a sound, whenever the hell it came from, made that little voice in me to suddenly tell me to stop running. I looked around, and I felt scared like I was a kid again, lost in the mall. The voice was loud in my head, screaming for me to run back to the elevators, and the skin on my back crawled in ways it never did before. I somehow gained the strength to put my weary legs into motion to run back towards the elevators. but for some reason, I now noticed that there was like a thick darkness around me. I felt like I was in a bubble of light that was probably like a meteor around me, and beyond that was a darkness that I could reach out and touch. The hair on the back of my head and neck stood up, and I felt like I was being watched heavily. My disoriented mind kept telling me to run and don't look back. But being the dumbass that I was, I did anyways. I looked behind me and saw a shadow just beyond my vision in the darkness. My heart skipped so many beats, it's a wonder I'm still alive. I picked up my speed and didn't care that the walls felt like they were flaking when my fingers ran over its surface. I made it to the elevators and I was freaking out. I clicked the elevator button furiously even though I knew that it wouldn't make the elevator come any faster. I heard more sounds, and the fear that I felt was indescribable. The smell of decay filled my nose again, and I was scared that the little girl would come back and try to take me. I heard a scratch to my left, and I whirled around to see the outline of a disfigured man in the shadows. My heart raced as I panicked. I had opened my mouth to scream, but that voice in my head shook me up. I don't know what the hell was going on, but I had the feeling that if I did scream or try and run now, that I would definitely die. The thing began running towards me and I flinched, keeping in my scream. Then, as he approached the light around me, he disappeared. Most people would have been happy that he disappeared, but oh my god, it scared the shiz out of me even more. How am I supposed to fight something I cannot see? Why was this damn elevator taking so long? I turned back to face the elevator button, and oh my bloody god, it was there in front of my face. It wasn't a man. I don't even know what the heck this was, but it had like grey leathery skin that was stretched over skinny bones. This thing looked like something straight out of an Alien versus whatever movie, but the head was similar to that of a human's. But it had only skin where eyes should have been and had two slits for nostrils. Its jaw protruded from its skull and was open to expose four large canine teeth, and the rest in between were like little dagger blades. It had no tongue, and saliva with the consistency of goo ran down the sides of its chin. I swear to God, I didn't care what the F would have happened to me. I almost screamed, but in that second, the thing lunged a bite at me, and I stepped back, pushing my hands out to keep it away. Its skin felt so cold and nasty, like I'm not even sure how to describe it. My nose missed the bite by a few centimeters. I freaked out and said, "Oh my god," and I somehow began to feel a bit calm. Black began to fuzz the corners of my vision, and I felt like I was going to pass out, but all I could think of was, "Don't run, don't scream." I began chanting the words, "Don't run, don't scream," in my mind, and surprisingly, it began to help. It gave me something other than the creature and my horrible surroundings. I closed my eyes, praying that it'll just go away. Its breath was so hot on my cheek that I felt, and it left a red splash. That's now fading, where its exhale touched my skin. The sound of the elevator I came up in opened, and I opened my eyes to see that the thing, no, the girl, wasn't there. I quickly ran into the elevator, pressing one and the close button like a maniac. The door took forever to close, and I couldn't have been happier when it did. I landed at one and took a serious look around to make sure I was in the land of the living. Nothing was amiss, but I still decided to get out the elevator and wait for the next. I couldn't stop freaking out, even after I got into the next elevator. Tears and snot were running down my face. I didn't care if anyone saw. What I've been through tonight is effed up. So many levels that I never want to take elevators again. F that, I'll take the stairs. After I got home, I googled the 7th floor of the ritual, but couldn't find anything. Decided to hop on Reddit to see if anyone knows anything about it. Beware the elevator ritual, especially the 7th floor. So I'm taking my dog out for a walk at 3 a.m. when I see a young kid riding his bike. Quick preface, I live out in the country in the American Midwest on the edge of a forest. Kind of middle of nowhere farmland. But there's still other houses around, although they are really spread out. Outskirts, I guess you could say, very dark and quiet at night. A few streetlights, but mostly just moonlight. I normally take my dog outside late at night before I go to bed. Nothing fancy. Just a quick walk up and down the road so she can pee before we settle in for the night. Well, tonight around 3 a.m. I'm walking my dog along the edge of the road outside of my house and I see something coming towards me along the side of the road. It's hard to make out at first because, like I said, there's very few streetlights out here. As it gets closer though, I can tell it's a kid riding his bike. He looks like he's 7 or 8 years old. I'm standing there a little bit confused about what a child of this age would be doing riding his bike down the road at this hour of the night. When he gets closer, he stops his bike dead in its tracks and just stares at me. After a few seconds, I speak up. Are you okay? I ask him. He doesn't reply. Just keeps intently staring at me. Kid, do your parents know you're out here this late at night? Again, he just stares at me. You lost? Do you need me to call your parents to come get you? I say as I slide my cell phone out of my pocket. The kid just starts laughing. Not like innocent childish laughter. He is full on laughing, like I am the punchline of some huge cosmic joke. He is laughing the way an adult would laugh, not the way a kid watching cartoons would laugh. It's hard to explain. It just wasn't normal coming from a young boy. I am a bit freaked out at this point and not quite sure what to do. On a dark country road with a 7-year-old kid laughing at me at 3 a.m. in the morning, I decide to make my way back to my house and call the cops to report a missing kid or something. Stay here, okay? I'm going to contact your parents and have them come get you, I tell him. Kid finally breaks his silence. Lucky you're one of the good people, Jacob, the kid says nonchalantly, and then rides off down the road. He knew my name somehow. I watch him ride off into the darkness. Who the hell is ordering pizza to my house at 3 a.m? Okay, so not gonna lie, I'm kind of freaking the F out. This has been happening for the past 3 days, and I don't know how to deal with it anymore. Some background. I am from Malaysia. I live alone in a budget apartment. Our country has been on full lockdown for over 2 weeks now, and my basic life schedule is completely messed. I'm usually up all night till the morning of the next day, sleeping during the afternoons to late evenings. Rinse and repeat. This was largely okay for me. Being up at night by myself is invigorating, since it's so peaceful and calm. The air is cooler and the world is quiet. Most of the times I just fool around on the internet, reading and watching videos after getting some work done. However, as I mentioned, starting 3 days ago, I've been getting delivery rides coming to my door at the dead of the night, usually around 3 a.m. The first time it happened, I was startled. Sure, I live alone. It's 3 a.m. Getting knocks on your door after putting on my mask, only to see a guy dressed polo shirt with a cap holding a box of pizza, relaxing a bit. I told the guy, wrong house bro, and tried to shut the door to get back to my business. But he stopped me with a, please boss, please. I turned back around. The guy tried to push the door pizza box towards me. "Please, sir, take it, your order." I shook my head firmly and said, "No, I didn't order anything. You've got the wrong house, man." But he didn't seem to be listening. He kept repeating, "Please, boss, take it, your order," while pushing the box to me. At this point, I kind of figured maybe this guy doesn't understand what I am saying, or maybe he was disabled in some way. So I took the box thinking maybe the delivery address would be on it or something. First thing I noticed, that this wasn't the usual chain store brand like Domino's or Pizza Hut. The logo was just Gab in block letters, which isn't a brand I know of. There was no delivery address tacked on the box. I tried asking for a receipt from the guy, but he just shook his head and said, no receipt," while backing away, ready to leave. I tried to stop him to hand him back the box, but he just wouldn't have it. He left hurriedly, and I ended up with a free box of mystery pizza. Now, I probably should be stoked because it's free pizza, but it's 3 AM. It's from an unknown place, from a brand I've never heard of, and it's delivered by one of the shadiest dudes I've ever met in my life. So I did what any reasonable person should do and left it outside my door, thinking I'll just throw it out with my trash in the morning. My sister always told me to never pick up strange things from outside. Easiest way to avoid bringing in any bad luck or trouble, she'd say. After that, I got back on my computer, feeling just a tad weirded out but not really thinking too much of it. Eventually the sun rose and I went outside to take out my trash. When I got outside though, the pizza box wasn't there anymore. It was a little strange, but I just shrugged it off as maybe the janitor or someone throwing it out for me. I proceeded with my day as usual and almost completely forgot about the whole thing. Until the knocking came again. I looked at the time, 2:45 AM. What the hell? I got up, put on my mask, opened the door. A different guy in the same uniform from yesterday stood in front of me, holding yet another pizza. "Sir, your order please, take it." I shook my head no. No order, it's not mine, wrong house man," I told him. This time I managed to just shut the door behind me before he could stop me. I stood by for a few more minutes, watching the guy out of my peephole. At first, he just stared blankly at the door. After it became apparent I wasn't coming back out, the guy just put the box down in front of my door and walked away. Satisfied, I went back to my desk and sat down, grumbling to myself about how bizarre and annoying it is to have this happen twice. Did some troll find my address and is pranking me? But the guy didn't ask for payment or anything. Is it just to harass me? Who would do that? Why me? Attempts to look up the pizza place returned no result, though it is also possible that it is a roadside business with no online presence. While all these thoughts are swirling in my mind, a realization hits me and I feel my heart stop cold. It's locked down right now. No restaurant can operate past 8 PM. How could anyone be delivering food at this hour? Also, riders are not supposed to walk up to the apartment themselves. They are supposed to leave the food at the guardhouse for pickup. So then who the heck was outside of my door? A chill shot down my spine. Internally freaking out, I quickly crawled to my bed, trying to calm my whirling brain. It's probably nothing. I didn't take the pizza in, and I didn't eat it either. If it happens again, I'll just get security and call the cops. It's gonna be okay. This is real life. This is real life. I repeated silently in my heart, with my eyes squeezed shut, until I finally drifted off to sleep. Day 3. 9 p.m. I wake up and go through my routine, nervously keeping an eye on the time. I tried my best to get my work for the day done, but it was impossible to focus. I kept waiting anxiously for the knocking to come. The clock ticked away. I stared at my computer, desperate for distraction. 2:25 a.m. Bang, bang, bang. Boss, your order, boss. Please, take it. Your order, boss. I froze in my seat for a solid 5 minutes, staring at the door. Bang, bang, bang. Boss, your order, your boss. Boss, your order, boss. I continue to wait without making a sound until the knocking stops. I can't say for sure how long it went on, maybe 10 minutes or so. I kept waiting. The silence stretches on. It's an abrupt change from the instant knocking just a few minutes prior. I glance at the clock on my computer. 2:55 a.m. It's been 30 minutes since the first knocks. Gathering all of my courage, I stepped quietly towards the door and peeped out of the peephole, hoping it's all just a big misunderstanding. It's all just a simple mistake, and whoever was outside the door has left like a normal person. But to my absolute horror, the guy was still there, standing straight and staring blankly at my door, holding the pizza box. I gaped in shock. All of a sudden, as if sensing I was there, the guy snapped his head up and stared straight back at me through the peephole. I got so startled, I almost fell backwards. He has no eyes. This guy or thing has no bloody eyes. It's just two gaping eye sockets where the eyeball should be. I stare on, frozen in shock. Slowly his lips started to quirk upwards, curving into a smile so wide it looks downright unnatural. Then, in a cheery voice, bordering excitement, he says, "Saya taho yo ada katsana." This time, I fell back with a loud thud and a yell. I scrambled away from the door as fast as I could, backing into the corner of the room, while keeping an eye on the door. This is when the banging started. Bang, 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 bang. Boss, your order, boss. Your order, boss. Bang, 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 bang. The thing outside kept repeating cheerily in between the non-stop banging. To say I was gonna shit my pants was a major understatement. I was ready to die on the spot, quite frankly, and honestly saw no other way out of this at that moment. I kept my eyes closed, hooded in the corner of the room, just thinking, this is it. I am gonna bloody die. This is it. Suddenly, a loud, angry yell came from next door. Who the hell is making all that noise? I hear thudding footsteps and the sound of my neighbor's door opening. There's a pause. Then it's back to silence. There's no more banging, no more cheery voice repeating, "Your order, boss, your order." I hear my neighbor's door shut and footsteps retreating. Shakily, I stood up and walked to my bed. I curled up under the covers with my eyes shut tight. But sleep didn't come. My entire body was on alert, dreading when the thing will come back knocking, calling me in that cheery voice. Racked with fear and anxiety the entire night, I was still absolutely exhausted when the first rays of sunlight peeked into the room through the window blinds. I checked the time. 6:30 a.m. I crawled out of bed, got dressed and walked down to security. I explained what happened these past 3 nights to the guards, leaving out the fact that what I saw could be inhuman. I suppose I was still clinging to some hope that it was a mistake, that my imagination got the better of me, and his empty eye sockets were just a slight trick of the light. However, after listening to my explanation, the guard just gave me a look of confusion and doubt. He tells me that nobody has been allowed up to the complex as per the rules, and even offered to show me the security footage when he saw how scared I looked. When the footage rolled, I can feel the blood draining from my face. It's just as the guard says. No one was allowed into the complex at the time of the incidents. As a matter of fact, no one was shown outside my door either. There was nothing I could say. I just thanked the guard and headed back to my room. Could I be hallucinating? That could be it. Maybe this lockdown schedule is messing up my brain more than I can take. I thought to myself as I trudged upstairs. As I was about to open the door to my room, however, the next door neighbor steps out. He shoots me a glare and says, "Hey man, what the F was making all that noise at your door yesterday, huh? Don't you have any effing manners? Don't you know 3 a.m. is when people are flicking sleeping? If it happens again, I'll report you, man," before slamming his door shut. He heard it too. He actually heard it. It's real. It's bloody real. Now I'm in my room, typing this out, looking at the clock. It's 1:30 a.m. right now. It'll come soon. I don't know what to do. Update. Hey, so something happened. After last week, I decided to pay a visit to my neighbor. I wanted to talk to him about the knocking thing, since things seem to have settled down. Also to thank him for what I think is him helping me out with the whole ordeal. Anyway, that's how I found myself outside his door at 10 a.m, 5 days after the knocking stopped, with a small box of mangoes in hand. I wanted to clear off any bad blood between us. I knocked on the door a couple of times, then waited. No response. I knocked again harder this time. "Excuse me, hello?" Still no response. At this point, I just assumed he was still asleep. Like I said, lockdown schedule really be bloody effing with us all. I got ready to leave, thinking I'll just come back in this evening or something. Before I could step away though, a loud scream came from inside his room. Go away, piss off, leave me alone." Of course I was startled. He sounded really pissed off, so I just yelled back, "Sorry," and scurried back to my room. I guess I caught him at a bad time. Maybe it was really rude of me to go over so early. Or maybe he knew it was me and was still mad about what happened before. Regardless, it was quite clear to me that I probably shouldn't bother him for a while. I could try again next week or something. With that mindset, I just went about my business as usual for the next few days. I've been trying to keep my schedule more normalized, up in the day and sleeping at night, just in case something came bothering me again. Like the wise man in the comment said, can't know if there's a ghost or demons trying to get me if I'm asleep. Plus, if anything did happen in the day, I know other people would be around to help. Everything was normal, good even, but yesterday, something happened. I woke up in the morning as usual, but not to my alarms. There were loud sirens coming through from the window and what sounded like people outside my door. Thinking there was a fire or something similar, I quickly jumped out of bed, put on my mask and headed out the door. The first thing to hit me was the waft of unbearable stench. It smelled like something that had been rotting for days. It was so pungent that it still got me reeling back even with my mask on. The second thing was my neighbor. I haven't mentioned this before because I didn't think it was relevant, but he is a fit man in his early 30s. Very much the kind of guy who works out on the regular and watches what he eats. But right then, as he was being carted off the stretcher by the paramedics, he looked more corpse than human. Now, I know why people use the phrases skin and bones. He was literally just that. Barely a person at all. His limb looked like fragile sticks, with his head lolled to one side. Facing me, I could see that his eyeballs were sunken deep into his sockets, reminding me of what I saw at my door just last week. "What's going on?" I asked the policeman by my door. He glanced at me and just told me to go back inside. The rest of the onlookers were also shooed back into their own homes. There was nothing else I could do. I went back inside, Tried to calm down and go about my day as usual. But I just couldn't get the image of my neighbor, what was essentially just his bones on the stretcher, out of my mind. What the hell happened? Is he dead? That's all I thought about for the rest of the day. When night came, I couldn't even sleep. The whole thing's got me paranoid again, and my mind was in overdrive. I can't help but think that what happened to my neighbor had something to do with me. Or more precisely, the thing. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? The thing stopped bothering me the day after my neighbor yelled and went outside. Did that thing make him like that? Is it my fault? I tossed and turned all night, feeling worse and worse by the minute. In the end, I couldn't even feel safe lying down, so I sat up and just stared at the door again. It's like I was back to last week, full of dread and anxiety. The clock kept ticking, and I kept watching, just squirming and staring, waiting and waiting until daybreak. At 7 a.m, when it got bright enough, I went down to the security guard again, hoping he might know what happened. I am not sure if it was good luck that he did know. Turns out my neighbor has been starving himself for almost 5 days inside his house. It was just pure luck that the cops managed to get to him in time. His brother had asked for a checkup since he hasn't been answering his phone and hasn't been showing up for work. Why the hell was he starving himself? No one knows but him. It wasn't like there wasn't any food in his home. There was something set on the table when the cops went inside to check. Presumably the last thing he ate, but apparently it was so rotted they couldn't tell what it was. That was what the effed up smell was. Now here comes the part that brings me here today. The guard told me he found something strange that he wanted to show me and motioned for me to come into his office. He still remembered me from when I asked him about the delivery man coming in. I followed him and he shows me the security footage of our floor from last night. The first video is from last Monday, the 21st 3 a.m. I remember. This was the second day of me not getting any knocks on my door. In the bizarre video, my neighbor had flung his door open, seemingly quite pissed. However, after that, he just stood by the doorframe. It looked as if he was talking to someone in front of him, despite there being nobody. He was gesturing angrily, shaking his head and hands like he was saying no. It was reminiscent of the Elisa Lamb security footage, just downright unsettling. After a few minutes of that, he seemed to stop abruptly, pick up something from the bottom of the screen. Then he turned around back into his house and shut the door behind him. I paled. The footage over the next 2 nights just showed similar footage of my neighbor angrily flinging open his door, looking around and going back inside, always at or close to 3 a.m. On the 4th day though, I saw myself with my box of mangoes waiting outside his door. That was the day he screamed at me to go away. My worst fear was being confirmed right before my eyes. It got him instead of me. I just know you guys might think it's just me overthinking, but how else would you explain it? It could have been me on the bloody stretcher. It could have been me starving to death in my bloody house. The only reason the thing left me alone was because it got someone else. After seeing that, I just rushed back to my room as quickly as I could. I've got to leave this place. I am not bloody sticking around until whatever the bloody heck it was comes back to get me. I have packed up my things now. I'm going to move back into my parents' house tomorrow. I can't deal with this crap. I don't want to deal with it anymore. It's currently 12:52 a.m. I am still looking at the door. Skinwalker at the gas station. This story belongs to a friend of mine. He told me this once, and I simply have to tell it. My friend is of Wixinux heritage, a Native American tribe who settled the Pacific Northwest coast. He is quite the character. For one, he is a whopping 6'10", and has the blackest eyes you could imagine. He always has this frowning face going on, which makes him even more intimidating. He is everything but a bad guy. In fact, he is the most gentle of giants. He was working at a gas station up north back in 1992, and he pretty much always worked the graveyard shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. when he was relieved. Business wasn't exactly booming at nights, so he was usually watching TV or reading magazines between customers, and there were few. The area he lived and worked in was deeply associated with all things Native American. There was a potent sense of pride in the surrounding communities, but also a very distinct presence of superstition and old traditions. My friend was no exception. He was a firm believer of the ways of the old. This made his encounter even more terrifying. One night, he was sitting as usual watching TV when a customer entered the gas station. The customer paid for his gas, a pack of smokes, and some soda, and returned to his car. Nothing unusual. But as my friend looked out the window toward the customer's car, he spotted what looked like a huge dog sitting by the edge of the woods. Now, the window is located on the side of the building, some distance from the sliding door, overlooking the pumps and the roof covering it. On the sides of the roof are pretty strong halogen lights, which shine into the gas station. This gives the gas station not only an eerie lighting with the blinds casting long striped shadows, but also blinds the teller to an extent. As he peered through the window, trying to focus on the dog, it was gone. He didn't think much of it, even if it was a wolf. He was inside, and wolves don't tend to rob gas stations at night. Wolves were common here, but this wolf was huge. He brushed it off and returned to his mindless watching of the TV. A couple of hours go by, and not a single customer has entered since the last one. He was just about to refill some condiments when he heard a large thud coming from the back. It wasn't inside. He could hear that, but it came from the back, and behind the building. They keep the garbage. The gas station had been visited before by scavenging homeless, but my friend didn't really care. It wasn't his garbage, and it was just garbage. Let them take it. But it kept getting noisier. He decided to grab a flashlight and a gun from the office and circle around the back to tell whoever ventured there to leave. As he had had enough, his presence alone would have scared off anyone, but he wanted to feel safe just in case. He exited through the sliding doors, walking past the window he just was sitting by. As he turned the corner, he shines the light towards the dumpsters. As the cone of light hits the dumpsters, my friend instantly drops the flashlight and the gun. It's the huge dog he saw before, scouring through the garbage. It wasn't a dog though. It clearly stood on its hind legs, reaching the same height as himself. It couldn't be a bear, as it was too gaunt. The creature's eyes had been glowing in the light of the flashlight, making it even more terrifying. He ran inside the gas station, and he wasn't followed. He locked the door, stayed inside the whole night, and quit the next day. My friend is still convinced that he saw a skinwalker, a shape-shifting shaman of sorts that are common occurrences in Native American law and culture. So sorry for the absence of blood, guts and glory. It's just a really creepy story. So you guys like skinwalker stories? I have a quick one for you. I'm dying, Navajo, and boy have I heard a lot of stories growing up on the reservation. While I've never seen anything myself, which I am grateful for, I have benefited by being around the people who have. There is a different kind of evil that exists in the quiet, high deserts and deep sandstone canyons of Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, even Colorado, in the southern Ute area. I can only describe it as an ancient evil now. There are helpful ceremonies, rituals, and traditions that are still practiced to this day. Hell, even a local hospital has an on-duty medicine man, but it seems to be a double-edged sword. What I mean is there is also black magic, which most dying will not even acknowledge or speak of. We are very superstitious and are heavy with taboos. You will find this with most First Nation people. From Alaska to Argentina, it's just something you don't do, in fear that it will get the attention of unwanted spirits or harmful beings. Skinwalkers or Nadlushi are just a few stories that kept me up at night with the covers over my head. Here is a quick one for you guys. A Navajo tribal police officer was driving west on what used to be officially named Highway 666. It was lightly snowing, maybe a quarter inch, which is a lot of snow for home, and he sees an old woman walking on the side of the road. How she got there or where she was going was not apparent, because she was so far out in the middle of nowhere, he didn't see her right away. But as he passes, he notices that she is dressed in traditional clothing, a shawl dress, moccasins, and hair is in the traditional bun. Not too old, many and the elders still choose to dress traditionally. But why was she out in such cold weather this late at night, hitchhiking? Maybe he passed her too quickly and now has to return around. And as he makes a U-turn, he notices she is nowhere to be seen. This is fairly flat terrain, and he for sure seen an old woman walking. He pulls the squad car over and steps out with his flashlight. Confused, he manages to find the woman's footprints in the shallow snow. He follows the footprints until they suddenly turn into what looks like dog footprints, leading away from the road in a hurry. He immediately jumps back into the squad car and meets up with another officer near his patrol. He is a little shaken up, but asks the other officer if he has ever seen anything like that. The officer tells him that he has. He also explains that sometimes it's an old woman, sometimes a very beautiful young girl, but always on that road and always in snow, waiting for the right good Samaritan to let her in to that car. I still got nervous driving those wide open spaces at night. I kept my eyes strictly on the road and turned my music up high. I rarely pick up hitchhikers, but I never pick them up at night. My skinwalker story, Arizona. Okay, so to start out, I live in Mesa, Arizona, which is basically Phoenix, Arizona. Because the main cities of Arizona spread out into many cities with no border in between. Mesa is what I would call the suburbs of Phoenix. I changed my name, of course. I live in an apartment complex I would describe as close to the ghetto, but still nice. I live in a bedroom, one bathroom apartment inn with my girlfriend. Arizona is a state full of ancient Native American history. I live next to a Hokum Canal, as do my Arizonians. The whole place used to be cities of ancient Native Americans. The point is, I'm in the area for what I believe to be a skinwalker. I'll get to my story. Yesterday I was drinking, one of the things I picked up during the COVID-19 quarantine, or what's enforced here, and decided to smoke a bowl on my apartment patio, which I don't usually do, mind you. I just finished loading up my pipe and taking the first hit when I hear a voice somewhere nearby. Amanda, open the door please. It was a young, probably in the 20s girl who was talking, and it sounded calm and teasing. It continued on as I tried to ignore it, smoking my last bud. After about 4 times of it repeating itself, my curiosity caused me to look for the source. I saw an apartment building facing across from me movement. I saw a dog standing on his hind legs, leaning on a door, tapping. At first I shrugged, of course. Then I hear the voice again. It sounded exactly the same as last time. Exactly the same, as if you recorded their voice and that sentence and replayed it once again. There wasn't any other sound or movement in the complex. I watched the thing knock on Amanda's door for like 30 seconds, in what I would call a state of shock and curiosity. Then it stopped and didn't move for another 20 seconds. Until the dog thing stood all the way up, away from the doorway on its hind legs and turned to face me. It made eye contact with me, which is weird because we were at least 50 yards away. I'm on the 3rd floor, it's on the 2nd, but I felt it looking at me. I held this eye contact. I was so scared. I felt like I should run. Then it got on all fours and headed down the stairs slowly. At the bottom, it started slowly walking over to me. I was on all fours now, about to go inside or scream. I don't know, but I had to know what this thing was going to do. It walked close to my balcony. Yes, it was a dog. A brownish yellow dirty looking thing with big eyes that were 100% attentive to mine. It didn't seem natural, to be honest, but nothing looked wrong at a glance, except that it was staring into my eyes and wouldn't stop. I ran inside as it reached the bottom of my stairs and locked my doors. Soon I heard clawing at my door, doggy clawing. Next I heard the door handle jiggle. Then it started on my porch door. I of course never answered. Instead, I hid behind my kitchen counter with a knife. After about 30 minutes, it left. I stayed up all night, but I didn't see it again, and I didn't go out again. I'm hoping it doesn't come back. I haven't gone outside at night again. I'm burning sage and trying to be careful as I can. Skinwalker birthday surprise. I live on a reservation. I'm almost 19 now. I was 17 at the time. And it's always been a standing rule that we can't leave our house after sunset. There's always been bad things happening. People going missing, animals going missing, animals showing up, and mutilated animals. Weird stuff. I was allowed to have a few friends over for my birthday party. I was really excited because this land is beautiful, and I would always like to show it off. 3 of my friends made it up here, 2 boys and a girl. I'll just refer to them as boy 1, etc. We went for a long walk up the mountain a little ways from the rest because the view up there is amazing, and even though it was getting on dusk, I figured we'd be fine. There's 4 of us all in a group together, and we've got hiking sticks with the space at the end, and it's only a 20-minute walk there and back. Boy 1 saw the end of a goat, but it was missing a tail, and it looked injured. We tried to get closer to see if it was alright, because all the goats around these parts are owned, but as we got closer, it made a really loud, low bleat and ran over the bridge. Boy 1 and I ran off the track after it and looked over the bridge. It disappeared. We stopped so we could hear which direction it was running to, but there was no noise at all. I thought it was a bit weird, and the sun was disappearing faster than I thought, so we started to head back. My friends would always laugh at the rules my family has about going outside at night, but they were about to find out why we have that rule, and I was about to get a fresh reminder. Boy 1 was leading us with his phone light. It wasn't that dark that we couldn't see in front of us, but the trail has drops and rocks, and because of the bushes the size of us, it made it really hard to see our feet. There was this giggle in front of us. We stopped because it was really close. It sounded like a turkey gobble, which is uncommon in my area. It happened a few more times after that. The sound gave me goosebumps because it didn't sound right at all. The next thing we saw still plays with my head. Going from left to right across the path was this thing. My heart jumped into my throat. It looked like a large coyote, but its limbs were mutilated like it was crossed between a human with sharp, long claws. Its face looked distorted and human, but it was animalistic at the same time, and it had really long teeth. The scariest part is the way it moved. It was rocking back and forth on all fours, like a praying mantis. It just take a step, and rock backwards and forwards, and then lurch another step forward. Its head was bowed down in between its shoulders. None of us moved for what seemed like a couple of minutes, just watching it jolt itself across the path. It looked like it was going to go past us and leave us alone, until the girl started crying and freaking out. The animal flung its head in her direction and made a really low growl, sort of like a house cat, because it had that voice behind it as well. It twisted its body around and started coming at us. It was terrifying. I yelled and threw down my spear at its head, but it was like it bounced off. When it got to me, it stood up. It was so tall. It barged into me, making me fall down. It started hiccuping and lurching, and then it barged into boy one. It backed into boy two, and he landed in a ditch just off the trail. There was hardly any light on us now. When it got to the girl, it contorted its body over the top of her and held her down. She started screaming. Boy two got up and hit it with his hiking pole hard. It jolted away up the path behind us, making a crying noise, almost like it was mocking the girl. It was playing with us. We picked ourselves up and ran as fast as we could back down the path and across the reservation to my place. We told my mum what happened, and she told me and my friends the legend of the skinwalkers. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking up to a crying sound outside that would stop just as my ears adjusted to being awake. I don't want to look outside my curtains. I never want to see its face again. The girl said when it was on her, it was hissing in her ear, and it was whispering things to her that she didn't understand. I still get nightmares. Is my new kitten actually a skinwalker? Hi guys, I'm having some trouble making up my mind about this. Just a heads up, I'm Norwegian, so my grammar and spelling might not be perfect. So I'll just start the story from the beginning. I live a bit outside of town, and I like walking in the forest almost daily to clear my mind and just take in nature. Well, obviously I sometimes see animals, and sometimes I come across injured animals, but if I see it necessary, I bring them home and nurse them back to health. A couple of weeks ago on my walk, I heard some squeaking a bit off of the trail. I went to see what it was and I found a kitten, practically newborn. I wasn't really sure what to do. The mum should be around somewhere, right? I reluctantly kept walking, worried that the mother might not come back if I stuck around. Maybe she was getting food or something. I stayed within earshot though, because I didn't want the kitten to be snatched up by a predator or freeze to death or something. I waited for about an hour, I think, before I decided that the mother probably abandoned it. I walked over to it, bent down, and started talking in that high-pitched voice everyone does around any kind of baby. Its eyes weren't open yet, but it moved its head towards my voice and tried to crawl towards me. I noticed that it didn't have a tail. I checked for any injury, but it just like it was born without it. Maybe that's why the mother left it. I gently picked it up, walked home with it inside of my jacket, to keep it warm. Got in my car and drove to the vet. I told the vet how I found it, and she started checking her out. She told me that it was a girl and that she seemed healthy, except from the lacking tail, of course. But that shouldn't be a big problem. Her balance might be affected, but since she's born without it, she'll get used to it easily. She asked me if I was planning on keeping her, and I said yes, obviously. The little furball was adorable. The vet helped me with some formula and basic stuff for it. Litter box, food ball, etc. She registered us in the system. I named her Shira. She congratulated me on my new kitten and I left, happy about having some life in my apartment again. Shira is growing fast, and after just a few days, it started to show that this isn't a normal house cat, but a bobcat. I don't really know what to do. I'm supposed to take her back to the veterinarian soon for vaccines, but I cancelled the appointment and said that she didn't survive. Bobcats are obviously wild animals, and it's legal in Norway to take in a wild animal in need of help for a short while before releasing it. But Shira knows nothing about being wild. She wouldn't survive on her own. If I take her back to the vet, she'll be put down, and I've already fallen in love with my little goofball. I'm not planning on keeping her as an inside cat though. She'll come and go as she pleases. But most likely, she'll always need me to make sure that she's well fed and healthy. You're probably thinking I'm crazy for wanting to take care of a bobcat and letting her into my house whenever she wants. But I've had cats before, and there is a special bond of trust when you take care of a cat practically from birth. I know I'm dragging on and you want to hear about the skinwalker, and I'm getting there. I just wanted you to know everything from before I started suspecting. A couple of days ago now, she opened her eyes, and seeing her eyes scared the shiz out of me. Her eyes are human. Like you can see the white around the pupils. I've had several cats before. Never a bobcat, of course. But I'm pretty sure the eyes aren't supposed to look like that. It's not just like small cat pupils. It's definitely the eyes of a human. And that was when all the skinwalker stories I've read and heard come crashing into my mind. The lack of tail and the human eyes are repeated in several stories. Don't ask me how a skinwalker would end up in Norway though. I thought it was a Native American thing. She's pretty much like any other kitten though. Playful and innocent. She needs me and I guess I need her too. I don't really have anyone else. I don't care if people don't believe me. In fact, I'd prefer if you don't. But I need advice. So if you could just pretend to be part of a movie or something. What advice would you give? Is there anything I can do to go check to confirm if Shira is a skinwalker or not? Has anyone ever had a friendly meeting with a skinwalker? Maybe taken care of an injured animal who turned out to be a skinwalker? I need someone to talk about this. But because of legal reasons, I can't talk to anyone here just because she's a bobcat. And I don't want her to get cut open and experimented on if people find out that she's a skinwalker. If she actually is. So I thought, why not turn to the wonderful Reddit community? The only thank you I can give is to keep you updated on her, how she developed, and whatever I find out. If she doesn't kill me, of course. I don't think she will though. She seems like she trusts me. The Skinwalker's House. I want to share this story because someone might find it useful. But I share this information, urging you to be extremely careful, and I beg you to never use it unless you find that you must. During my freshman year of college, I lost control, mostly due to freedom from my parents and a group of friends who were more interested in a good party than a good grade. I spent more time sleeping and drinking than I did in class or studying. But all of that changed when I woke up in the hospital bruised and covered in cuts. I was told I had been in a car accident that night. I and two others were driving home from a party when the car crossed into the center divider. rolling several times and tossing all of us from the car. Miraculously, I escaped the crash with some scrapes and bruises, but mostly unharmed. The other guy in the car, Michael, broke his arm and got a bad concussion. However, the third occupant, a girl named Sam, was tossed in front of the rolling car and crushed underneath it. It took a rescue crew 4 hours to extricate her from underneath the crumpled mess of metal, and by the time they got to her, she was beyond saving. The police had no idea who was driving during the crash, and I couldn't remember anything about that night due to my state of impairment. Michael and I got stiff warnings about driving while intoxicated or getting into a car with a drunk person. But other than that, we got off scot-free. My friends all said that Sam had been driving and that I was so effed up I couldn't even walk, let alone drive a car. Despite their reassurances, I was haunted by guilt and uncertainty. Had I been driving when we wrecked? Why did I survive? Was I responsible for her death? Every night, I had nightmares of Sam calling for me from underneath her twisted metallic grave. I stopped leaving my dorm, stopped answering my phone, consumed by guilt and uncertainty. After a month of moping around my dorm, a friend of mine named Mark reached out. We talked for hours about my uncertainty and how I would never get answers. In response, he told me about the legend of the Skinwalker's house, a ramshackle green shack right off of Highway 380. Here a person could meet with the ancient beings and make deals and bargain, including asking questions that otherwise could not be answered. At first I was incredulous. I thought Mark was messing with me, trying to play a sick prank, but I was desperate to know. So I talked to some friends who had grown up on a nearby reservation. One of them put me in touch with a tribal elder named Richard, and after a few emails and lying about doing a research project, Richard told me about summoning a skinwalker, which the Navajo call Yi Naldushi. When we first spoke, Richard was hesitant to talk about the subject, but after repeated calls and a face-to-face meeting, Richard explained the ritual to summon a skinwalker. As we finished our conversation, Richard warned me that when one makes a bargain with a witch, the witch always takes something in return. I will give you the same warning that Richard gave me. Yi Naldushi is not to be summoned or questioned on a whim. Please do not summon a skinwalker unless you are ready to accept the consequences of your actions. If you decide to disregard my warning, you will need the pelt of a coyote, 4 animal fat candles, a rosary that has been blessed by a priest, a liter of animal blood, and a crow's feather. Skinwalkers are most active right after sundown, when there is a storm coming in from the southeast. The house where you can meet them is between mile marker 13 and 14. It's not hard to find. It took 3 months to find everything and for the perfect weather system to arrive. Mark and I drove together to the house around 5. Just as the sun began to sink underneath the Magdal nest, shadows oozed from the dilapidated house, its spruted green paint peeling off of the bleached bones of wood. The house had no windows or doors remaining, and I could smell the mildew and rot from the road. Mark and I climbed through the barbed wire fences in front of the house and made our way in as storm clouds rolled in, bringing with them peals of angry thunder. As we stepped inside, the smell of all rotting wood overwhelmed me, and I fought the urge to vomit. As we sat down on the striped wooden floor, we spread out the coyote pelt with the head facing me, placing the greasy wax candles at the end of its paws. We then placed the crow's feather in the mouth of the coyote pelt. After setting up the pelt and lighting the candles, Mark left the house and parked the car at a turn off a mile up the road. When I was sure he was gone, I took the rosary in my hands and pulled hard, scattering the bees across the floor and pelt. I sat down at the head and took the goat's blood I had procured from a butcher and dumped it across the pelt, spattering myself and the ground in dark maroon splatters. The storm continued its steady progression across the desert, and the roar of thunder rumbled in my chest. I closed my eyes and focused on the sound of the storm, willing the creature towards me. I was lost deep in my focus when I heard it. A wolf's low howl mixed with the screams of a woman, a horrible cacophony of animal and man swirling together. I opened my eyes to see the human wreath in fog, the supernatural mist surrounding a house, but not permitting the structure itself. I heard a deep, guttural chant coming from behind me as the creature approached the dilapidated wooden structure. Then came the footsteps. Heavy padding steps crunched against the gravel behind me, quickly followed by the creak of wood as it stepped into the house. Its hot breath stung at the back of my neck as it sniffed me before circling in front of me. It had taken the form of a huge grey wolf, far bigger than even myself. The legs were too long and spindly, the hide patchy and balding, and its ears were short and tattered. The skinwalker sat across the pelt from me and stared at me like I was a rabbit about to be devoured. Its eyes were unlike those of wolves, with dark brown iris, angry white sclera, and round pupils. Suddenly the wolf let out a pained yelp and began to shudder. The braying whimpers of the animal filled the house as the fur and skin began to slow off the screen. The flesh sizzled and popped like frying meat as the body began to disintegrate, quickly followed by the opening of the chest cavity as a woman crawled out of the quickly decomposing wolf carcass. She had Native American features with skin so wrinkled and scarred I couldn't even guess her age. Hair hung in black stingy strands, and worst of all, her lips were stretched and mangled so that her mouth could never close fully. She wore a patchwork of skins and pelts and a pair of antlers atop her head. Even sitting, she was nearly a head taller than me. She locked eyes with me, inhuman, horizontal slits like a goat's peering out from behind the mess of hair that hung around her face. Her voice croaked in her throat, and a harsh, guttural dialect spewed forth from her lips. My heart sank. How could I have been so stupid? Why would an ancient Navajo witch speak English? She must have noticed my disappointment, because she reached for a pouch on her belt and took out some sort of grey, waxy substance. She spread it on the tips of her index fingers, leaned forward, and jammed her fingers into my ears, her long, dirty fingernails scratching my ear canal. I yelled in pain and surprise at the intrusion, and she shifted her weight back into a sitting position. For a split second, my hearing faded before the sound of the storm surged back to life with a loud crack. The old woman locked eyes with me again, her face lit by the flickering candlelight. She spoke again, this time in English. I have given you the gift of hearing. What is it you seek from I who goes on all fours? Her voice low and raspy, like sandpaper on stone. My voice caught in my throat, my gut tightening at her words as I began to drift into a daze. I pushed my fingernails into the flesh of my palm until I could focus again. When I did answer, my voice was weak and uncertain. I need to know if I killed her. She cackled, her voice spiraling to a crescendo until she sounded like a coyote baying at its frightened rabbit. "Very well, Bayalagana, I can help you, but what have you brought for me?" My stomach twisted painfully again as fear clawed at the back of my mind. "I haven't brought anything to give you." "Very well. If you have nothing to give, then I must take. Do you agree to these terms?" I paused for a minute, considering what Richard had told me, but my guilt overwhelmed my rationale, and I shakily nodded and my head in agreement to her terms. The skinwalker smiled at this, revealing rows of miscellaneous teeth in her carnivorous, distorted mouth. The teeth were inhuman, with sharp wolf-like canines mixed in with broad flat teeth like a horse, in a horrible conglomeration of strained rows of ivory shards. The laughter came again from her lips, horrible coyote cackling that made my skin crawl. After another round of laughter, she produced a crude stone knife from her belt and with a quick motion ran it across the palm of my hand, spilling dark rivers of blood onto the pelt before reaching towards me. I extended my hand, and she dug the cruel stone into the soft flesh of my palm. My silky skin cried out in agony, and blood wept from the exposed flesh underneath. She clasped my bleeding hand with inhuman strength and pressed my wound against her own. Our blood mixed, and I felt it trickle down my arm and pool at the crook of my elbow. The woman began to chant and stared into my eyes as blood continued to flow freely down our arms onto the pelt between us. Her voice grew rough and animalistic as she continued her chanting. As suddenly as she had started, she stopped and let go of my now throbbing hand. "Oh, Bialgana, how foolish you have been, just like your forefathers with their drink and their endless cruelty. But her blood is on her own hands. Her foolish pride gave way to steel and glass. I have given you your answer, and now I will take two things from you. I take from you Naidzil, your dreams." A wave of relief washed over me. I could live without dreams anymore. My dreams had been playing with visions of Sam calling out for help from beneath her metallic tomb, begging for my help. With inhuman strength and speed, the skinwalker grabbed my hand again and brought it to its mouth. I pulled hard against his grip and yelled to no avail as it pushed my thumb into its mouth. Hard teeth clamped down hard against the appendage, tearing away the flesh and bone of my thumb. Blood sprayed from the wound, painting a sanguine picture on its face. The creature chewed, and I could hear the crack of bone and squelch of soft flesh in its teeth. I screamed in agony, clutching my hand and pressing the wound to my chest. My vision faded and blurred as I slumped to the floor. I wish I had gone unconscious. I wish I had closed my eyes. Instead, I watched as the skinwalker tore at the flesh of its face, its long claw-like fingernails shredding through skin and muscle. The skinwalker grabbed the skin on its arm and pulled, tearing it away from the muscle underneath, the flesh coming away like wet newspaper. I watched the muscles of its arms bulge and flex as it tore away the soft skin on its stomach, disemboweling itself. A grey coil of intestines lolled out of the abdomen, dragging against the rough wooden floor. It continued tearing away its flesh until only scraps remained on the skeletal frame. I willed my eyes to close, but they would not. I stared transfixed on the horrifying visage in front of me. The figure dropped to all fours and pulled one of the pelts it was wearing over its face. The pelt stretched and contruded, spreading over the skeletal limbs. The figure trembled and shook, twitching unnaturally. Then it began to grow, the limbs stretching and contorting, the chest becoming narrower. I watched as two sets of large antlers splintered out of the top of its head, stopping just before the ceiling. The figure continued to shift and contort until finally a massive bull elk stood in front of me. It strode out of the house, then paused and looked down at me. We locked eyes for just a moment before it let out a loud bulge and took off into the night. I pulled off my shirt and wrapped it tightly around my still bleeding hand. I staggered out of the house and glanced around, afraid the creature was waiting for me outside. There was nothing except for the rumble of thunder and the throbbing in my hand. I walked the mile to where Mark had parked the car, all the time pleading with my body to not bleed out. Mark paled when he saw me and rushed me to the hospital. I told the staff at the hospital that I had been messing with all farm equipment, a story they bought easily enough. In spite of everything that happened, I felt relieved with the knowledge that I hadn't killed Sam. The skinwalker kept its word. It did take my dreams, because now I dream not about Sam, but instead about the skinwalker. I dream of the skinwalker changing and shifting. I watch time and time again as it tears apart animals for its dinner. The worst is when it attacks people, as I am forced to watch as it stalks hikers and campers. I watch as it disembowels them, mounts their bodies onto tree limbs, or skins them alive. I don't go into the woods anymore, for fear that I may see that thing again. But now and then, as I drift off to sleep, I hear the sound of an elk bull, followed by peals of coyote cackling. Don't wander the Navajo Nation at night. The name is Alex. It's generic white boy name, I'm aware. But I was actually born and raised in a small town called Chinle. Chinle is nestled deep in the arid mountains of the NE Navajo Nation in the northeast corner of Arizona. While many Arizonian small towns embody some sort of nostalgic Americana feel, this cannot be said for any town on the reservation. The reservation, Chinle included, was rife with poverty, alcoholism, abuse and social isolation. It's the closest you can get to hell within the United States. So perhaps it isn't any wonder that after buying vodka from a friend at the age of 16, I was merely wandering the outskirts of the town, taking swings of vodka. My father was abusive, my mother dead. I had no real reason to return home for the night, nor did my father have any reason to care if I returned. I had a bottle of vodka in one hand and a gun in my jacket pocket, in the off chance some sizz went down, as it tends to on the res. The night would have been more memorable even without my terrifying and life-changing experience, as it was a frigid March night, temperature below freezing. A light dusting of snow was falling from the pitch-dark night sky. That's the one benefit of the Navajo Nation's clear night skies. But it's truly akin to finding one diamond in 50 acres of shiz. I walked it in a lackadaisical fashion alongside a 2-lane road, a rural road on which few ever drove. I heard rustling noises in the bunches to the left and spotted a coyote. I shrugged it off. I'd had dozens of encounters with coyotes in my life. I had no reason to fear it. I took another swig of vodka and continued walking, hoping I could reach the state line by 1 a.m. The crisp night air seemed to accelerate into a much more frigid, windy atmosphere. Something felt off. Something felt deeply ominous in an unsettling way. I glanced to my left again. The coyote, which mustn't been 25 yards from me prior, was now about 10 yards away from me and slowly walking my direction. Perhaps it's hostile, I thought to myself. Regardless, I remained largely apathetic, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a modicum of fear at this point. 30 seconds later, I'm still walking down the road. The coyote is within 30 feet of me, keeping pace with me. It didn't seem outwardly hostile from a cursory glance. It just appeared as if it was following me, as if I had a nice slab of steak in my back pocket. I kept an eye turned to the coyote. I was growing deeply concerned. A drop of icy sweat dripped past my brow. My wind, the wind only grew stronger, and the coyote closer. I considered my options and quickly realized that I could get bloody effed over if I didn't act. Seeing as I was the track star on the Chinley High School prior to my expulsion, I leaped forward at a rapid pace and simply ran for it. I bolted. I hauled ass. I sprinted. The coyote remained walking momentarily, as if he didn't want to bother some drunken teenager sprinting through a frigid desert. Then the coyote rapidly picked up his pace, and within seconds was a mere few feet behind me. The facade of passiveness in the coyote's eyes had vanished. I saw pure hatred. I swore its eyes were yellow. I swear it. I had never seen anything like it in my life. Absolutely frightened, I smashed the bottle of vodka across its skull when it came no more than a foot behind me. While the coyote was wounded, I wasn't bloody around. I continued running. I paused for a second and continued running. The glass was easily lodged within the coyote's head. I looked back and saw a pool of blood formulating on the icy road. I looked forward, then again looked back and did a double take. The coyote no longer had a wound on its head and was again running full force towards me. So, I did something that is completely illegal on the reservation. Something worse than bootlegging alcohol at the age of 16. I pulled out my grandfather's old pistol I carried and fired a shot. I missed. I tried again. Missed again. The coyote is again feet behind me, snarling something violent, as if it's trying to communicate. The ominous silence had vanished. The coyote was enraged and inhuman. A third shot. This time it landed in the coyote's head yet again, wounded. And you'd better believe I didn't stop to celebrate. I had seen what this bee was capable of. I dropped my pistol and ran and ran. Then I saw the headlights. I frantically stood in the middle of the road, motioning towards the oncoming car, attempting to stop him. Most Navajo don't pick up hitchhikers for safety precautions, so I was going to force this guy to let me in. Within 10 seconds, the man driving the vehicle came to a screeching halt, almost slipped on the black ice. I stopped and stood by the passenger door, and he reluctantly rolled down his window. Let me in! A bloody coyote is chasing me. I'm not a delinquent, I swear. Please, sir, trust me. He simply nodded his head and let me inside the vehicle. He must have been drunk, I figured, as I took deep, long breaths as I buckled my seatbelt. I gazed into the rear view mirror of the automobile, driven by a silent, drunk Navajo man. The coyote was running behind us, easily going faster than 30 miles per hour, maybe 40. The man took notice of this and began speeding up. Kid, is this what chased you? He said in an incomprehensible slur. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a coyote. The faster it ran, I began to see it. Antlers, a pelt on its head. Wait, his head. The four-legged creature was now on his hind legs. Wait, no. Where did his other 2 legs go? The driver glanced at me and locked eyes with me. Skinwalker, he said calmly. That is a skinwalker. I will drive fast now, he said. 60, it followed. 65, it followed. Once we reached a magical 80, in his beat-up Toyota, the creature was no longer visible in the rear-view mirror. The driver chuckled in a drunken fashion and said, Ha! Skinwalkers and tourists who come here say it's just folklore. That time, I saw a skinwalker, a witch, and a werewolf. Late summer 1986. We were driving through the Rocky Mountains on our way to Ouray. There were three of us: Steve, Danny, and me. We were young, dumb, and fed up with what life was really like after college. So we bought some matches, packed a cooler of beer, food, and beer, and loaded up my trusty Toyota with all the fixings for a classic camping trip. This trip was supposed to shake up the devastating monotony of our daily life. And shake us up, it did, to the very core. Right before we were getting ready to set out, Steve's mum ran out of the house and told him he should take their newly adopted family dog, Luna, for safety. Steve was hesitant. He didn't want to have to look after the dog, especially if we were going to be drinking. And she was a big dog, a mixed husky and something else. Great Dane maybe. But his mum insisted until finally he broke and agreed to take her. Luna looked up at him with her warm blue eyes and seemed to smile. Steve sighed and said, "Guess I'll sit in the back with her." No, I said, walking over and patting her head. "Let her sit up front with me." She wagged her tail. Most of the car ride went smoothly, and we sang along to the radio, mooed at the cows, and waved at or flipped off motorcyclists. But as we neared our destination, and the sun sank behind us, leaving us in a thick, almost tangible darkness, we started to become jumpy, pointing at strange shadows and swift movements. Luna, though, was curled up and asleep beside me, unaware of our growing fear. The sky was covered in big, rolling clouds that blew swiftly towards the east, covering and revealing the full moon at random intervals. By now, we were the only vehicle on the road. My headlights barely sliced the darkness around us as we weaved our way through the mountains. The isolation, the darkness, the silence, it was all so crushing. "Steve, I thought you said we would be there before the sunset." "I told you we shouldn't have stopped at that bar." "Oh, Danny, I didn't know we'd be there for that long." "You wouldn't stop your stupid pool game." "And I won't, come on, it's not that dark out. Would some money make you happy? You ass." "Hey, cool it, look, what the hell is that?" I slowed the car down to a stop, trying to see what was blocking the road, but the light from the cloud-covered moon was too dim. "What the hell?" "Danny," I whispered as she rolled down her window. I was apprehensive, worried this was someone's attempt to rob us or worse. I had heard all the urban legends before. "I just want to see better." She stuck her head out of the window, and I rolled a little bit closer. Luna, feeling the change in the car's movement, lifted her head and sat up panting. "It's a... oh shiz, I think it's a dead deer, you guys. Gross." Danny retreated back inside the car and rolled the window back up. "Who the hell just leave something like down the road?" "Asshole," Steve said, then leaned forward. "Hey man, think you can drive around it?" Yeah, I think I can." I approached the thing, now seeing the antlers and the gleaming black eyes, open, staring, dead. It blinked. I yelped and jerked the steering wheel, side swiping the mountainside. "Shiz! What the hell, man? It's alive!" "What? The effing deer! It's alive!" As I spoke, the deer lifted its head and bleated. The sound echoed around the chasm. We all jumped and watched as it pushed itself up, up, until it was standing on its hind legs like a man. But uncanny, grotesque, mesmerized, we sat unable to move as the thing walked over to us. Slowly, decidedly, as if walking on two legs was a thing this deer did often. It leaned down next to Danny's window, its face so close to the glass that steam from its nose fogged it up. A low noise rang out through the car. Luna was growling. Her hackles raised, crouched in the seat next to me. Bang! The thing rammed its head into the window. Chaos erupted. Danny screamed, piercing high. Luna started barking, booming, persistent. Steve yelled, telling me to effing go. Just go. I shakingly struggled with the clutch, stalling. Bang! The window cracked out, and the thing started making an incredible sound. It sounded like a weird screeching, guttural form of laughter. Finally the clutch caught, and I sped the hell out of there. I checked the rear view and saw the thing standing on two legs, looking at us. Suddenly it leaped forward and began running after us. It ran on two legs instead of four, and it was so fast, so bloody fast. I drove as fast as I could on that winding mountain road, but despite my speed, the thing still caught up with us. It tapped its antlers on my window and screeched that weird laughter again. Then it pointed in front of us, bared its teeth and stopped. The abruptness of how quickly it disappeared caught me off guard. "Watch out!" I snapped forward, and what I saw made me slam on my brakes. A house. A bloody house in the middle of the road. I guess it was more of a cottage or a hut, but there it was, clear, vivid, in front of us. Danny was audibly crying in the back seat, repeating, "What the heck?" over and over to herself. Steve was breathing heavily, like he had just run a marathon. Luna was whimpering beside me and scratching at the window. Nausea enveloped me, made worse by the vibration from my pounding heart. Seriously, what the heck is going on? I think I'm going to puke, man. Don't effing open that door. Just back up. Turn around, man. Let's go back. Towards that thing? No bloody way, man. Well, if you didn't bloody notice, there's a goddamn house in front of me. Just drive through it, come on. No. Danny, calm down. It's okay. We're okay. We'll be okay. Danny simpered and started sobbing again. Shut the heck up, Danny, please. Guys, look. Oh God. The house, it was spinning slowly and stopped when the front of it pointed directly at my door. The door to the house slammed open and emitted a sound like a gunshot. A single point of light emerged from the darkness inside the house. A candle. And holding it up was a figure, stooped over, covered in what looked like blackened rags. It began to approach us, lurching forward, swift and slow, then swift again. It was making this eerie, deep, staccato sound. Are you for real right now? Steve was leaning forward, peering out the windshield. Let's go reverse. The thing is behind us. Run it over. Look, Danny screamed. The stooped figure was now running at full speed straight at us. It slammed onto my hood, and we could finally see what it was. An old woman, covered in wrinkles, completely bald, with sharpened yellow teeth. She was moaning and moaning. She crawled up the hood, opened her mouth and licked the glass, leaving a trail of blood-covered saliva. Luna went wild, barking, foaming at the teeth, throwing herself at the door. Please, please, please. Back up now. I slammed my foot on the gas, but my tires made a sickening sound, and the smell of burnt rubber slipped into the car. It's behind us! It's bloody behind us! I turned back to see the deer's head, teeth still bared, peering at me from the back window. Shiz, blood! What do we do? What do I do? Luna, no! With a final lunge, Luna forced the door open. It sounds shocking, but she was such a large dog and strong. A powerful wind picked up and the rolling clouds dissipated, allowing the light from the full moon to illuminate the scene in front and behind us. Luna was as still as a statue, slightly crouched, poised to leap. The hackles on her back quivered, and a single thread of drool spun itself down from her mouth. She began to shake, faster and faster. It looked like she was having a seizure. The old woman and the deer thing were both looking over at her. Something strange was happening to Luna. It looked as if her limbs were breaking, elongating, her snout narrowed, sinking closer to her face. She rose up onto her hind legs, humanoid, and howled up towards the sky before locking eyes with the hag on my car. In the blink of an eye, Luna was on the woman, ripping her away, shaking her to and fro in her jaw like a rag doll. Luna flung the woman towards the house, and she struck it with some force and didn't get back up. The house and the woman vanished in a puff of smoke. Luna turned towards the thing behind us. It screeched, raising itself up to its full height, challenging her. Luna howled again, then licked her fangs. The thing took 2 steps towards her before turning tail and fleeing down the road. Luna giving chase. They both ran on 2 legs instead of 4. We sat in total silence for a few moments, until I leaned over and slammed the passenger side door closed. I think Danny passed out. I turned to look at Steve. He looked at me. Let's get out of here, man. We got 2 miles before the tuk 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 beneath us couldn't be ignored any longer. A flat tire. I pulled over, and we eyed the darkness around us, paranoid. I'm not changing it. I'm not going out there, Steve said loudly. Don't worry. There's no spare. A what? I took it out to make room for all the camping stuff. Are you bloody kidding me? Nope. Well, what the hell do we do now? I sighed. I didn't know. Suddenly, like magic, like a miracle, headlights appeared behind us. A godsend, a car. I hope they're normal. Me too. Should we tell them? We locked eyes again. No, if they bring it up maybe. If it's a cop, definitely not. He'll think we're high. The car rolled up behind us. It was totally black with tinted windows. The window rolled down and behind it sat a middle-aged man. He looked tired, maybe sad. Need some help? Oh, thank God, Steve whispered. Yes, flat tire. Don't have a spare. Well, that's dumb, the man said. You should always carry a spare, always. Never know what could happen. Lucky for you, I think I have one that will fit your car. You joking? The man shook his head and hopped out of his car. He was dressed sharply. Black suit, black tie, black shoes, all covered by a trench coat. Come on, you can hold the flashlight for me. I hesitated, then exited the car. What happened here? He pointed to the window next to Danny's head. Oh, it's been like that for a while. Dumb neighbor kid hit it with a baseball. Uh-huh, the man nodded. And her? Tired, just tired. We've been driving for a while. Driving where? Owari, for camping. Nice place. Yeah, we've heard. Say, the man said, releasing the job done. Seen anything weird tonight? My heart sped up, and I looked around us, half expecting the deer, or the woman, or Luna to come sprinting towards us. What do you mean weird? Oh, I don't know. Anything out of the ordinary. No, why? Uh, oh, no reason, just heard some spooky tales. Tales? That the natives who used to live around here would tell. What tales? The man stood up, dusted his hands off on his coat. Well, he said, ignoring my question. You're all set. You're about 20 minutes out from Ore, and 2 hours from the sunrise. I'd advise you get a move on. Never know what might be stalking you out there. I'm headed the same way actually. I can drive behind you if you like. A muffled yes came from inside the car, and we both looked up to see Steve nodding recklessly. Yeah, that would be great actually. The corners of the man's mouth twitched a bit as he nodded, sliding back into his car. We drove to Ore without incident, and as soon as we hit the city, the man in the car behind us flashed his brights twice, then flipped a U-turn, speeding back down the way we came. I thought he said he was going this way, I said, looking in my rear view. Who cares? Let's get a hotel room and leave first thing tomorrow morning, Danny said. She had woken up as we were driving towards Ore. We filled her in on the strange man and how he helped us, but she was still spooked and jumpy. And we did just that. We didn't dare camp in the wilderness or even leave the relative safety of the town. On the way back to civilization, we swore to never tell anyone what happened. It was too weird, uncanny, horrifying. Steve was silent, afraid of what his mum might say or do about Luna. We made up some story about how she had fallen over a cliff after chasing a deer. Poor Luna. We had stopped for an hour around the area it happened and called out to her, but to no avail. We never saw her again. It's been years since this happened, and I'm old now. The three of us lost touch after we returned from the trip, but vowed to keep this secret to our death. Last I heard, Steve died from a heart attack, and Danny was diagnosed with stomach cancer. I figured it's about time I shared my tale. Maybe it'll help me make some semblance of sense out of it. In the end though, I don't know if those things were protecting us from her, or if she was protecting us from them. I guess I'll never know. Sometimes, late at night, when I hear howling, I like to imagine it's Luna out there somewhere, running free in the wild. What's the most creepy thing that's happened to you while home alone? I'll go first. This is happening as I'm typing this. Keep that in mind. My sister and I are home alone at the moment. Normally, I have a lot of fun home alone with my sister because I get to browse the interwebs happily and ignore the outside world for a few hours. Everything was going okay for a while until I heard loud footsteps going down the stairs that are a few feet from my room. For clarification, me and my sister's rooms are upstairs. Her room is to the left of the stairs, about the same distance away from them as mine. My room is to the right of them. We're both in our rooms. She's watching TV, laying on her bed, and I'm here. Also, these footsteps were the loudest I've ever heard, almost as if something was being thrown down them. At first I thought it was my sister walking down them, so I called out her name. No answer. Confused, I walked out of my room to check the stairs. No one was there. And I see my sister standing off to the left of them, just outside her room staring. I asked her why she didn't answer me when she went down, and swore up and down that it wasn't her. At that point, I was rather unnerved. My sister is not that good of a liar in the first place, and no way in hell was it any of my cats. I've lived with them for literally all my life, and never have I ever heard such loud footsteps from any cat we've ever owned. Seriously freaked out, I walk downstairs slowly. Generally, if I hear a noise coming from the house and I don't know the source, I grab a knife in case it's a zombie. Seeing nothing, I stop at the bottom of the stairs and jump on the last step to see what sound it made. I could not produce a sound as loud as the one we heard, so I was thoroughly convinced my sister couldn't do it. She's about 50 pounds lighter than I am. I went back in my room and waited for another sound. Eventually it came, and it freaked me out even further. But of course, I didn't want to freak out my sister. So I started joking with her about how she shouldn't walk so heavily on the stairs. She wasn't buying my fake cheesy grin, and neither was I. So now I'm sitting here, waiting for another one. This isn't paranormal, but it's the freakiest thing that's ever happened to me when I was home alone. A few years ago, when I was about 14 or 15, my parents went to see a movie and left me at home. My house faces a park, and people in the park can look into our kitchen. Around 9 p.m, a guy approaches the back door of my house and knocks. Because the door is French style, I can see through the windows, and this guy is not someone I know. He asks me if he can use the phone. I tell him that we don't have one and he can try the neighbors. The guy seems to leave, walks down the porch and into the darkness, and I return to my duties on the computer. I was sitting at a table surfing the internet when this happened. To my right was this window that is around the back of the house. To access it, you need to be deliberately looking to go to this particular area of the house. I'm using the computer, minding my own business, when my dog, bless her little heart, bolts towards the window, barking and snarling. You know that moment when you know exactly what's waiting for you, but you refuse to believe that it could be true? I had that. I told her, "Lucy, get away from the window." She wouldn't stop barking. Tentatively, I turned to look out the window. The guy was standing below the window, watching me. I shrieked and dove under the table, screaming for him to get the F away from me. The guy circled back around the house and stood on my porch outside the door. Eventually, I decided that being in his direct line of sight was a really bad idea. So I made a run for it and hid in the kitchen, and then a windowless bathroom. I sat in there for 2 hours, trying to calm myself down while talking to a friend on the phone, until my parents came home. I have no idea how long the guy stood there, but he was gone by the time my parents came home. To this day, I wonder what that guy wanted. I also wonder what would have happened if I let this guy into my house. Because this guy got into my yard through the park, we padlocked the fence. Even then, it took about a year for me to feel comfortable being home alone again. Even now though, I spend most of my time upstairs or hidden from view of the park when I'm home alone at night. This was about 6 months ago. I woke up in the middle of the night and didn't find it unusual. My neighbor's truck always wakes me up when he starts it about 4 a.m. and I always clearly hear him drive away, but the truck isn't running. So now I'm curious what woke me up. I open my eyes, look around for a second, and realize something isn't right. In the darkness, I managed to pick up some sort of movement near the open bedroom door. After a couple of seconds, I could swear that something is silhouetting against the white door in the very faint light. I froze for what felt like an hour and grabbed the pistol laying on my headboard, but realized I can't find the flashlight that normally sits next to it. Silhouette hasn't moved, and I'm pointing a loaded .45 at it, with a little doubt creeping into my mind since I have no light. Do I shoot and risk looking like a crazy shooting at shadows shapes? Or do I try to turn on the light? My blood pressure was so high I couldn't hear anything except thump, 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 and tunnel vision had kicked in. Finally said, "F it, turn on the light," that hangs over the headboard in as quick of a motion as I could, and the goddamn light bulb pops, burns out as soon as it comes on. Now I'm blind, and the adrenaline is really getting the best of me. At this point, I have still managed to control myself enough from shooting, but I have started thrashing violently while trying to get off the bed and put something between me and the horrible beast. Suddenly, my hands finds the flashlight that eluded me earlier, and I shine a piercing beam of light towards the door. Nothing. Get up, shaking, shivering, hot and cold, all at the same time. Look down the hallway with the light. Nothing. Spare bedroom, bathroom, living room, kitchen, and even the horrifying basement are all clear. Any SWAT team would have recruited me after seeing me tactically clear those rooms. Relief starts to wash over my body as I head back to the kitchen to calm down. As the adrenaline subsides and bodily functions begin cooling down from red alert, I notice a refreshing, cool breeze and to my horror realize that the kitchen sliding door is wide open. The scariest thing that happened when I was alone was years ago. I was laying in bed, not quite asleep yet, when I felt like someone was in the room. At the doorway to my bedroom, I kept glancing over because it was really scaring me, and I kept feeling like it was a big tall man just standing there. Of course, I didn't see anything, but I was really psyching myself out. Suddenly, I felt like whoever it was had rushed at me, and I panicked and started flipping out. I started to think that maybe I was sleeping, or half asleep, and just having some sort of nightmare. My window was open, and I lived on the third story. As I felt the guy rush me or whatever, I heard a woman from the other side of the window call me name and say, "Hey, you need to stop." And he was gone. Didn't feel like he was there. Didn't see anyone. But I was scared to death. Of course, I checked the window. As unreasonable as it was that someone would just be floating on by it, there was nothing. It could have been a nightmare. But to this day, I remember being somewhat awake, and even if it was, it disturbed the hell out of me. When I was 19, I had a full-size bed and 2 pillows. My closet had those accordion-style doors on them. I always made sure they were closed before I went to sleep at night. One night, I woke up when I heard a noise. I was on the side of the bed closest to the wall, facing the wall. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the closet doors were open. I started to sit up when I felt the covers pull tight from behind me, like someone or something was climbing onto the covers. I knew whatever it was had just come from within my closet. I've seen enough horror movies to know that as long as you don't see the undead beast with maggots dripping from its eye sockets, it won't eat you. So I put my head back on the pillow and just said, "Good night," closed my eyes tightly and willed myself back to sleep. When I woke in the morning, my closet doors were closed, but there was the impression on the bed and the pillow next to me that looked like someone had been laying there. This went on every night for about a year. Then one night, a friend of mine stayed the night. I never told him about this thing in the closet. He slept on the floor next to the bed that night, but he used the pillow from the side of the bed, the thing from the closet always used. It's important here to note that my friend has a history of sleepwalking. About 1:30, I woke up and saw the silhouette of my friend standing at the foot of my bed. I groggily told him to lay back down and go to sleep. Then I noticed the closet doors were open, and my friend was still asleep, laying on the floor next to the bed. Apparently the thing from the closet really enjoyed sleeping on that pillow. I apologized and told it that my friend was using it tonight, and there was nothing that could be done. The silhouette slowly faded away into nothing, and I laid back down and went to sleep. In the morning, the closet doors were closed again. I told my friend what happened the next morning, and he freaked. From then on, whenever he came over, he brought his own pillow. but the closet doors never opened again at night. My home is extremely active, if you catch my drift. I get a lot of creepy feelings. One time, home alone, I was in the living room watching TV, and a movement catches my eye. I look up and see this face, pure white, bald, blue eyes, peeking around the door frame from the dining room at me. It was a child size, and I about shiz my pants. I got up, grabbed the remote. Any kind of weapon is better than no weapon, am I right? And walked towards it slowly. It follows me with its eyes tilting its head up as I got closer, and it grinned, slowly, showing its tiny pointed teeth, and its giggle was that of a chime. It was unnerving, and at that point I was rooted right where I stood. It then promptly disappeared. I slowly backed up and sat back down and never saw it again. Knock on wood. Other than that, I usually hear whispers and soft laughter from my dining room at night time when I am turning off everything and locking up. They quiet down when I go into the living room, but it is slightly creepy. Not necessarily creepy, but I was sitting in my living room watching TV. The living room has huge bay windows looking into the backyard that we keep the blinds up on to let sunlight in. It's pitch black out there, but I'm not thinking of anything scary. Suddenly, I hear a loud bang from my backyard, and the motion sensitive lights come on. Went to my room, locked the door, and stayed there. Next morning, I went out to look, and there was nothing different about my yard. My significant other and I live in a small house together in the suburbs of a nice town. On this particular afternoon, I'm in our bedroom getting ready when I hear laughter coming from our living room. "What's so funny?" I yell out to him. He mumbles something inaudibly and starts laughing again. "I can't hear you," I exclaim, and I quickly walk down the hallway into the living room. I'm greeted with an empty couch, and that's when I realize that my boyfriend is at work. My sister and I were watching a movie pretty late at night. I was about 15 and she was 13. We had 4 dogs, 3 small ones and aggressive lab chow mix. In his defense, the only people he's ever lunged at were strangers. He's also particularly blind in both eyes. They wouldn't stop barking at the entryway. From the living room, you can see through the little breakfast nook in the kitchen. Things were getting uneasy. We told the dogs to be quiet several times. Our mum is a complete horror if she's woken up. Out of fear of our mum finding us up at 2 a.m., we tried to keep the dogs quiet, but they persisted. They kept on like this for about 2 minutes, and then they just stopped. There was silence, aside from Brutus, hiding behind my legs and whimpering. Our other dogs are hiding, and about that time I look over at the entryway and see the figure of a man walk across the entryway. Freaked me right the F out. My sister didn't see it. At first I thought it was my dad because the entryway leads directly to my parents' bedroom. The door makes a super loud noise when it's open, and there wasn't a sound made when he walked across. I never saw the shadow man again in that house, but I refused to go into my parents' room. Asleep in bed, maybe 3 a.m., I wake up suddenly to the sound of the gate opening. It leads from the side yard to the backyard, and it has very distinctive squeak. And it's right outside my window, probably 6 feet from my head. I lie there for about another 30 seconds, silently straining my ears to see if someone has really just gone into my backyard. At this point, I hear a huge effing crash from the backyard. I don't know what's going on, but whoever is back there has just done something major. I jump out of bed, grab the gun, and bolt to the back door. Turn on the lights, and I see a giant tree limb has fallen out of a dying tree onto my fence, breaking part of it. The same wind that blew open the gate must have finished the limb off. I sit up for another half hour, waiting for my heart rate to slow down, and I go back to sleep. I live in an apartment with my girlfriend, and I was sleeping, as one often does. I don't remember if what I was dreaming. I rarely remember, but I woke suddenly and found myself staring at the ceiling. We both have clocks that illuminate the room, so it's not pitch black. Also, the bedroom door is open into the living room. There's a street light outside and light sneaks in that way too. So I wake up and I'm looking at the ceiling and regain my bearings. I wear glasses normally, so without them I'm not totally blind, but I lose detail while looking at any distance. I decide I need some water, so I go to get up, but find myself pinned to the bed. I think my legs, arms, entire body is asleep. So I start moving some more. While trying to move some more, I am utterly and completely unable to move. I start to freak out. I can move my head just a little bit, but my arms and legs don't respond. I can't sit up. I can't move. I try to keep cool and not lose it. Did I have an aneurysm while sleeping? Is this a dream? Can I make enough noise to wake my girlfriend up, or will I lie like this until morning? It's during this moment that I hear them. A low, snarling talk just outside the door. I can't understand what they're saying, but it's about me. It's about coming to get me while I'm paralyzed. I think I can see their fingers curl around the door frame. Is that one of them peeking in? It's too dark, I can't see, but I can hear them. They are small boogers, all gnarled and sharp-teethed. The grumbling continues. I wish I could understand what they're saying. Why haven't they come in yet? They must know how utterly helpless we are. Can I wake up the girlfriend without letting them know I'm awake? Slowly, their sound fades. They give up and leave. I don't hear them go, but I know they're gone. I'm still freaked the hell out, but I'm safe. After a few moments, I realize I can move again. I don't move for a long while. I finally get up and peek around the corner in the room. I do a circuit around the apartment, but find no sign of them. Eventually I go back to sleep, but not for a long, long time. I, of course, have no rational explanation for all of this. When my mum was younger, let's say about 7 or 8, she and her sister were home alone one night. They were sitting on the couch in the living room watching television, and my mum hears somebody whisper her name. She looks at her sister and says, "It sounded like Mum just whispered my name. Is she home?" Her sister gets really pale and says she's heard a name as well, but their parents were both at work. Then out of nowhere, an old hubcap they had hanging on their wall as a decoration fell off the wall and slowly rolled in front of them, across the room, and finally hit the other wall and fell over on its side. They ran outside and waited in the driveway until their parents came home. Creepy, but not that interesting. Nothing has happened to me, thank God. The way my cat acts sometimes freaks me out more than anything that ever happened to me home alone. He just stares long into space and then freaks out of nowhere and hauls us out of the room. It's scary. Since I've read stuff that says animals see more than we do, aka there might be something invisible to me in my house that's making me and my normally unfazed cat freak out like it's doomsday. Also, when I'm home alone, I feel like I'm being watched. There's this sense of paranoia that just coils in my guts and makes me too afraid to move. One night, I was laying on my bed trying to fall asleep. I sometimes lay for 2 hours or so before I actually sleep, when my body was pulled to the foot of the bed, as in I was dragged by my feet to the edge and stopped there. This happened a few times that night when I readjusted myself. I usually sleep on one side of my bed, closest to the wall and facing it, but one night I was on the other side, facing out to my room. Now, I didn't see anything, but I felt my body, and the side of my bed I was on raised up, as if something lay down on my usual spot. It would have to be an extremely large something in order to do that. To hell with looking at what was there. I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen.